In the vast, breathless expanse of the deep past, before the first stone was knapped or the first fire kindled, there was a profound stillness that lay like a heavy blanket over the cradle of the world. To understand the story of the hand, and specifically the mystery of the left and the right, we must first cast our minds back to a time when such distinctions did not exist, to a time when the world was whole, unbroken, and perfectly reflected in the waters of the ancient earth. Picture, if you will, the primordial African savannah under the heavy, pressing heat of a midday sun. This is not the world of steel and glass we know, nor is it even the world of the stone-tipped spear. We are drifting back 3 million years, perhaps 4, to the Pliocene epoch. It is a time of heat and dust, a time when the great tectonic plates of the Rift Valley were groaning in their sleep, stretching the skin of the continent until it tore, creating the stage upon which our drama would unfold. The air here is thick with the scent of dry grass and the ozone tang of distant storms. The light is blinding, a relentless white-gold deluge that bleaches the color from the bone-dry earth. Listen closely to the soundscape of this lost world. There is the ceaseless, dry rustle of the savanna grasses, tall and sharp as knives, whispering secrets to the wind that travels uninterrupted from the Indian Ocean. There is the low, vibrating hum of a billion insects, a living static that underscores the silence. And occasionally, the silence is shattered by the guttural cough of a predator, a Dinophilus, or a saber-toothed cat, stalking through the golden haze. In this ancient theater, life was governed by a sacred geometry. It was a rule written into the very architecture of existence, a law older than the mountains themselves. This was the law of bilateral symmetry. Look at the creatures that share this burning landscape. The gazelle drinking nervously at the waterhole, its reflection perfectly doubled in the stillness of the mud. The eagle tracing lazy circles in the thermal currents above. The beetle trudging through the sand. They are all mirrors of themselves. Left matches right. One side is the twin of the other. And standing there amidst the waving grass is our ancestor. They are small, perhaps no taller than a modern child, their bodies covered in the fine, dark hair that protects them from the stinging sun. They stand on 2 legs, a precarious and revolutionary act of balance, their spines straightening like young saplings reaching for the light. Australopithecus, the southern ape. They are the bridge between the forest canopy and the open plain, and their bodies are masterpieces of symmetrical engineering. Consider the face of this ancestor as they gaze out across the rift. It is a visage constructed of perfect duality. 2 eyes, set deep beneath a heavy brow ridge, scan the horizon. This duplication is not a luxury, it is a necessity of survival. With 2 eyes, the brain can triangulate the world, perceiving depth and distance. They can judge the leap across a ravine or the distance to a lurking predator. If one eye is lost to the thorn of an acacia or the claw of a rival, the other remains, a backup system ensuring that darkness does not fall completely. 2 ears, swiveling slightly, catch the snap of a dry twig or the rustle of a python in the undergrowth. By processing the fraction of a second difference between a sound hitting the left ear versus the right, the ancient mind builds a 3-dimensional map of the invisible world. The symmetry allows them to locate the source of danger before it is seen. 2 nostrils draw in the dusty air of the Pliocene, analyzing the chemical signals of rain, of rot, of fear. For aeons, this symmetry was the law of the land. To survive was to be balanced. To be whole was to mirror the world around you. In this era, the hands were still discovering their purpose. They had been freed from the duty of walking. No longer did the knuckles graze the earth with every step. They hung at the sides, fingers curled in a resting state that remembered the curve of the tree branch. But these hands were not yet the specialized tools of the artist or the warrior. They were identical twins, equal in strength, equal in clumsiness, equal in potential. Imagine a day in the life of this ancestor. As the sun climbs to its zenith, baking the red earth, the hunger begins. They move through a grove of fig trees near the riverbank. Watch the hands. They reach for a ripe fruit with the left hand, plucking it from the stem. A moment later, they use the right hand to steady themselves against the rough bark of the trunk. There is no preference. There is no dominant hand. The brain has not yet assigned a captain to the vessel. When they sit in the shade to crack open a hard-shelled nut, they might pick up a stone with the right hand one day and with the left the next. It is a world of ambidexterity, but not the skilled ambidexterity of a modern pianist. It is the ambidexterity of the unchosen. The neural pathways that would one day construct the superhighways of handedness are essentially faint trails in the grass, equally trodden, equally wide. The brain is a bicameral kingdom, two hemispheres living in a peaceful, unspecialized détente. This symmetry offered a profound survival advantage in a chaotic world. If a hand was injured, crushed by a falling rock or bitten by a viper, the other could seamlessly take over. There was no loss of complex function because there was no complex function yet to lose. The body was a redundant system, built to endure the brutal attrition of the wild. It was a conservative design, risk-averse, ensuring that the organism could limp forward even when damaged. But the universe, in its infinite unfolding, rarely tolerates stasis for long. Within this perfect reflection, deep within the cellular machinery of life, nature began to dream of variation. It was not enough to simply exist in equilibrium. The changing world began to demand something more. The forests were retreating, surrendering to the relentless march of the grasslands. The easy food, the low-hanging fruit, the soft shoots, was becoming scarce. Survival began to require more than just gathering. It began to require extraction, manipulation, and processing. It required a break in the symmetry. A quiet divergence was brewing in the silence of the genome. It was not a thunderclap, but a whisper. Deep in the molecular chains of DNA, in the spiraling library of instruction that builds a body from a single cell, a subtle shift was occurring. It was a mutation, a random drift, or perhaps a response to an unseen pressure, a silent error in the code of life that would rewrite our destiny. This shift suggested a radical new possibility, that one side might lead while the other followed. Imagine the developing brain of an unborn hominid floating in the warm, saline darkness of the womb. For millions of years, the genetic instructions had said, build the left like the right, build the right like the left. But now, a new command was flickering into existence. It whispered to the neurons, urging them to migrate differently. It suggested that the left hemisphere of the brain might take on a specific burden, the burden of sequence, of time, of fine motor control, while the right hemisphere remained the watcher, the feeler, the scanner of the holistic picture. It was not a flaw, but a prelude to mastery. It was the biological equivalent of appointing a leader within a committee. If both hands try to do the complex task, they might interfere with one another. But if one hand holds the object steady, the anvil, and the other operates the tool, the hammer, suddenly, the capacity for force and precision multiplies exponentially. as the sun of the Pliocene dipped below the flat-topped acacia trees, casting long violet shadows across the cooling earth. The stage was set for this subtle rebellion against symmetry. The great herds of wildebeest stood motionless in the twilight, their silhouettes doubled by their shadows. The world looked the same as it always had. The stars that wheeled overhead were the same cold, indifferent lights. But inside the skull of a small, hairy primate, shivering against the coming chill, the balance had tipped. The era of the mirror was ending. The era of the tool, the weapon, and the divided mind was about to begin. Let us linger here for a moment, in the last golden hour of the symmetrical world. Feel the cooling air on your skin. Smell the wood smoke of a natural fire burning somewhere in the distance, fire that we have not yet learned to tame. This is the moment before the choice. The hands are empty, open, and equal. They are waiting. In the silence of the deep past, the body is a question waiting for an answer. The symmetry is beautiful, yes. It is safe. It is the logic of the starfish and the worm. But to become human, to become the shapers of stone and the dreamers of language, we would have to break the mirror. We would have to choose a side. And in that choice, in that ancient microscopic deviation, lay the seed of everything that was to come. The spear, the pen, the sword, and the violin. The twilight deepens. The sounds of the day, the buzz of the tsetse fly, the call of the francolin, fade into the chirping of crickets. The first predators emerge from the gloom, their eyes reflecting the moonlight. Our ancestor climbs into the safety of the branches, gripping the bark with hands that are still, for this one last moment, perfect twins. They sleep, unaware that in the genetic darkness, a coin has been tossed. The 10% are waiting to be born. The 90% are waiting to take the lead. The mystery of handedness is about to unfold, carved not in stone, but in the soft gray matter of the mind. As the moon rises, casting a silver path across the savannah, we bid farewell to the perfection of the start. We move from the safety of the duplicate to the risk of the specialist. The silent symmetry is broken. The story of the left and the right begins. Imagine, if you will, the silence of a library before it is built. Imagine the stillness of a cathedral before the first stone is laid. We return now to the deep, velvet darkness of the biological past, to a time when the blueprint of humanity was still being drafted in the ink of trial and error. We have spoken of the symmetry, that perfect ancient law that governed the gaze of the eagle and the stride of the gazelle. But for a story to begin, the perfection must be broken. For a hero to emerge, the peace must be disturbed. And for the human mind to awake from the long dream of the animal kingdom, the mirror had to shatter. It did not happen with the crash of thunder or the splitting of a continent. The most profound revolutions in the history of life are often the quietest. They occur in the microscopic spaces, in the hushed, watery cathedrals of the cell, where the machinery of existence hums a tune too low for us to hear. Imagine the moment the code of life shifted, not with a roar, but with the quietude of a falling leaf touching the surface of a still pond. We are drifting now, shrinking down, smaller than the grain of sand, smaller than the speck of dust dancing in a sunbeam. We are entering the sanctum of the genome. Here, in the spiraling staircase of DNA, a decision is being made. It is a subtle shift, a typographic error in the manuscript of eternity. A single molecule changes its position. A protein folds in a way it has never folded before. It is a deviation in the cellular architecture, a tiny, silent rebellion against the tyranny of balance. For millions of years, the instruction had been simple. Copy, repeat, mirror. Build the left side of the brain exactly like the right. Ensure that every function is duplicated, every safety measure redundant. But nature, in her restless creativity, began to whisper a new command. It was a risky proposition, a gamble played with the highest stakes imaginable. The command was to divide, to specialize, to decide that the brain would no longer be a perfect mirror of itself, but a house of many rooms, each with its own unique purpose. We must understand the gravity of this shift. In the wild, symmetry is safety. If you are a fish, you must be able to see a predator coming from the left just as well as from the right. To favor one side is to leave the other blind. To favor one hand is to leave the other weak. Yet the pressure of the environment, the drying savannas, the complex social webs, the need to manipulate tools, was demanding a new kind of processing power. The brain could no longer afford to be a simple echo chamber. It needed to become a complex engine of asymmetrical thought. Let us journey now from the abstract spiral of DNA into the warm, pulsing reality of the womb. It is here, in the dark, aquatic cradle of gestation, that the drama of the broken mirror first plays out. Picture the embryo of an ancient hominid, floating in the amniotic sea like a mariner in the void of space. It is the size of a bean, then a fig, then a fist. It is suspended in a timeless state, reenacting the history of life, growing gills that vanish, a tail that recedes. In this warm darkness, a preference is being etched into the developing nervous system. It is subtle at first, a ghost in the machine. By the 8th week of life, long before the eyes open, long before the first breath of air is drawn, the die is cast. Modern ultrasounds show us that even at this delicate stage, a fetus will suck the thumb of its dominant hand. In the ancient world, under the skin of a mother gathering tubers on the edge of the Serengeti, the same silent drama was unfolding. For the vast majority of our ancestors, the unseen currents of genetics drifted them toward the right. The genes that control the body's orientation, the genes that spin the heart to the left and the liver to the right, also nudged the brain to favor the right hand. It was a cascade of biological dominoes falling in a predictable line. The left hemisphere of the brain, the side that controls the right side of the body, began to claim the throne. It laid claim to the fine motor skills, the precise movements, the rhythm of action. But then, there were the others. There was a small, resilient faction that drifted left. They were the anomalies. They were the ones for whom the genetic coin landed on its edge. Perhaps it was a different combination of alleles, a rare shuffling of the deck. Perhaps it was a fluctuation in the hormones of the mother, a spike of testosterone or a dip in estrogen that altered the migration of neurons in the developing skull. Whatever the cause, a minority was born. The 10%. They floated in the womb, sucking the left thumb, their brains wiring themselves in a pattern that defied the statistical norm. While the majority were constructing a citadel of right-handedness, these few were laying the foundation for a different kind of castle. This was not a defect. We must banish that word from our vocabulary. In the deep time of evolution, there are no defects, only variations waiting for a purpose. This was the birth of the minority who would walk a different path, who would see the world from a slightly altered angle. This divergence was a calculated risk by evolution. Why create a species of sides? Why break the symmetry at all? To understand this, we must look at the concept of lateralization. Imagine a great library, the library of the mind. In the symmetrical brain, every book is stored twice. The manual of hunting is on the left shelf and the right shelf. The song of the rain is on the left and the right. This is safe, but it is inefficient. It takes up twice the space for the same amount of information. When the mirror broke, the brain began to divide its labor. It became like a master architect assigning different tasks to different wings of the library. The left hemisphere, for most, said, "I will take charge of the sequence. I will handle the steps of the hunt one after the other. I will handle the precise chipping of the stone. And one day, I will handle the grammar of language, the ordering of words." And the right hemisphere, freed from these duties, said, "Then I will watch the horizon. I will read the emotions on the face of the stranger. I will understand the shape of the world, the distance of the stars, the feeling of the music." This separation allowed the brain to double its capacity without doubling its size. It was a biological trick of the light, a way to pack more soul into the same small skull. But for the left-hander, this architecture was often rearranged. Sometimes it was mirrored completely, with the right hemisphere taking the lead. Sometimes, and perhaps most mysteriously, the functions were spread across both sides, creating a brain that was less compartmentalized and more interconnected. As the neural pathways thickened and branched like the roots of an ancient baobab tree seeking water in the dry season, the left hand became the conduit for a unique kind of wiring. Picture the nerves themselves, white filaments of communication stretching from the cortex down through the brainstem. At the base of the skull, in the medulla, they cross over, the decussation of the pyramids. It is a physical twisting of the cables, a knot that ties the left mind to the right hand and the right mind to the left hand. For the left-hander, this wiring hummed with a different frequency. The signals that traveled down the arm to the fingertips of the left hand were carrying a distinct rhythm. It was a silent phenomenon, invisible to the naked eye. If you looked at a group of early Homo erectus walking across the volcanic ash of a prehistoric plain, you would not see the difference. They all walked upright. They all carried the same wooden spears, hardened in the fire. They all looked up at the same terrifyingly bright moon. But the difference was there, hidden in the potential of the grip. It marked the first time humanity truly broke the mirror. We became a species of sides. And in that asymmetry, in that refusal to be perfectly balanced, lay the seeds of our future dominance. Let us descend now from the womb and the neuron to the dusty reality of the Rift Valley. Let us witness the birth of this asymmetry in the cold, hard light of day. The time is the early Pleistocene. The world is a dangerous, shifting place. The forests are memories, and the open savannah is a testing ground for the clever. We find a small band of hominids resting near the muddy bank of a dwindling river. The air smells of wet earth and animal musk. The sun is a white disk burning through a haze of dust. Watch a young male, barely out of adolescence. Let us call him the left. He sits apart from the others, holding a rough nodule of basalt in his hand. He is hungry. The marrow inside the bone of a scavenged antelope carcass calls to him, but the bone is thick, and his teeth are not enough. He needs a tool. He picks up a heavy cobblestone, the hammer stone. Most of his kin hold the hammer in the right hand and the bone in the left. It is the way of the tribe, the way of the majority. But the left feels an awkwardness in that arrangement. It feels clumsy, like wearing a skin that does not fit. Without a word, without a conscious thought, he switches hands. He holds the bone in his right hand, his steadying hand, his anchor. He grips the hammerstone in his left. He raises his left arm. The muscles of his shoulder, the deltoid and the trapezius, contract in a sequence dictated by the right hemisphere of his brain. His eye traces the line of the strike. Crack. The blow is true. It is powerful. It is precise. The bone splinters, revealing the rich, fatty marrow within. In this simple act, the mirror is shattered in the physical world. The left has discovered his advantage. While his tribe mates might struggle to imitate him, their right hands clumsily trying to mirror his left-handed strike, he has found a rhythm that works for his specific biology. He is an outlier, yes, but he is a fed outlier. This lateralization, this division of labor between the hands, was the spark that ignited the explosion of human capability. Consider the difficulty of early tasks. To make a stone tool, to knap a hand axe, requires a profound asymmetry. You cannot hold the core with the same force you use to strike it. If you strike with both hands, you crush your fingers. You need one hand to be the vice, the unmoving earth, and the other hand to be the lightning, the active force. The breaking of the mirror allowed us to become masters of the material world. It allowed us to manipulate objects with a complexity that no other creature had ever achieved. The chimpanzee uses a stick to fish for termites, yes, but it does so with a fluidity of hand usage, switching back and forth. The human commits. The human chooses a side and trains it to perfection. But there is a cost to this breaking. Evolution is never a free gift. It is always a trade. By specializing the hemispheres, by pushing language to the left and emotion to the right, we introduced a vulnerability. We created a potential for disconnection. Imagine the corpus callosum, the great bridge of white matter that connects the two hemispheres. It is a bundle of millions of nerve fibers, a superhighway of information. In the lateralized brain, this bridge is the lifeline. It allows the left hand to know what the right hand is doing. It allows the logical mind to understand the emotional heart. For the left-hander, this bridge is often thicker, more robust. It has to be. They are living in a world designed for the right-handed majority, constantly translating, constantly adapting. Their brains are forced to communicate across the divide more frequently. This increased connectivity is a gift, leading to what some scientists call divergent thinking, the ability to make unexpected connections, to see the solution that lies off the beaten path. But in the ancient world, the cost was also social. We are creatures of imitation. We learn by watching. A child learns to tie a knot or throw a spear by mirroring the elder. For the left-handed child in the Pleistocene cave, the world was a puzzle that had to be mentally rotated. When the elder said, "Hold it like this," and used the right hand, the left-handed child had to flip the image in their mind, translating the instruction into their own body language. This struggle, this constant friction against the grain of the world, forged a unique kind of resilience. It carved a deep groove of adaptability into the soul of the 10%. They learned to be observers, translators, problem solvers. They learned that there is more than one way to hold the spear, more than one way to skin the hide. And deeper still, beyond the tool and the weapon, lies the mystery of language. The breaking of the mirror was likely the catalyst for the birth of the spoken word. As the brain reorganized itself to control the complex, sequential movements of the right hand, it repurposed those same neural circuits for the complex, sequential movements of the mouth and tongue. Hand and mouth are brothers in the brain. Even today, watch a person speak. Their hands move in time with their words. We gesture to explain, to emphasize. In the twilight of the prehistoric world, the first languages were likely a blend of sound and sign, a dance of the hands and the voice. For the majority, the center of this language dance settled firmly in the left hemisphere, right alongside the controls for the right hand. But for the left-hander, the map was different. Their language centers might be in the right hemisphere or distributed across both. They were the ones who perhaps spoke with a different cadence, who gestured with the wrong hand, who brought a variation to the chant of the tribe. As the generations faded into dust, as the glaciers advanced and retreated over the face of Europe and Asia, this trait remained. It did not disappear. It did not take over. It held steady at that mysterious 10%. It was a frequency maintained by the wisdom of natural selection. Why? Because a species that is entirely uniform is brittle. A species where everyone thinks exactly alike, moves exactly alike, and solves problems exactly alike is vulnerable to a single catastrophe. By keeping the mirror broken, by preserving this minority of reversed lateralization, nature was keeping a backup drive. She was keeping a wild card in the deck. The left-hander became the reservoir of the unexpected. In the hunt, they attacked from the left. In the fight, they struck from the blind side. In the council, perhaps they offered the thought that came from the other side of the brain. They were the grit in the oyster that created the pearl. Night falls on the Pleistocene. The fire is dying down, casting long, flickering shadows against the rock walls of the shelter. The tribe sleeps, a pile of furs and breathing bodies huddled against the encroaching cold. In the dim light, you can see their hands. Most are curled, right hands protecting the face, dominant and sure. But there, on the edge of the circle, is one who sleeps differently. Their left hand twitches in a dream, grasping at a phantom tool, throwing a phantom spear. Inside their skull, the neurons are firing in a pattern unique to their kind, a symphony played in a different key. They are the silent witnesses to the breaking of the mirror. They are the living proof that humanity was not designed to be a monolith, but a mosaic. The code of life shifted, the leaf fell, and the ripples are still spreading today. We carry this ancient history in the way we hold a pen, in the way we throw a ball, in the way we reach for a coffee cup in the morning light. The breaking of the mirror was not an end, but a beginning. It was the moment we stepped through the looking glass and found ourselves, not as reflections of the animal world, but as something new, something divided, something beautifully, dangerously complex. And as the dawn breaks over the ancient hills, painting the sky in bruises of purple and gold, the left hand wakes, ready to shape the world in its own image. We move now, through the shifting mists of deep time, leaving the soft, womb-like silence of the beginning, and stepping onto the hard, unforgiving ground of the Stone Age. The air here is different. It is thinner, colder, carrying the metallic scent of snow from the encroaching glaciers or the dry, baked dust of the Rift Valley, depending on where the wheel of the era has stopped. But wherever we stand in this vast epoch, whether in the Olduvai Gorge or the caves of the Dordogne, the soundscape is dominated by a single rhythmic heartbeat. Listen closely. It is not the beat of a drum, nor the thrum of an insect. It is a sharp, percussive clack, then a pause, then clack. It is the sound of rock striking rock. It is the sound of the human mind imposing its will upon the geological earth. We have entered the age of the lithic, the era where humanity forged its first external claws, its first imperishable teeth. And here, by the flickering amber light of a communal fire, the first true test of handedness reveals itself not as a theory, but as a physical reality carved in stone. To understand the left hand, we must first understand the stone. Picture a core of obsidian, volcanic glass born from the fiery belly of the earth, cooled instantly into a material black as the midnight sky. It sits heavy in the palm, cool to the touch, a dense knot of potential energy. It is smooth, yet it holds a secret violence. If struck correctly, it does not crumble. It fractures. It shears away in a perfect razor-sharp flake, an edge sharper than the finest surgical steel of the modern world. But to unlock this edge requires a mastery of physics that the animal kingdom had never seen. It requires a choreography of the hands that is the ultimate expression of the broken mirror we spoke of in the womb. Imagine the tool maker. He sits cross-legged on the earth, the debris of his industry scattered around him like a carpet of glittering knives. He is a master of the reductive art. Unlike the potter who adds clay to build a shape, the napper must subtract. He must see the finished hand axe hiding inside the raw block of stone and liberate it, strike by strike. For the right-handed majority, this process had settled into a predictable, dominant rhythm. It was a standardized dance. The left hand was the anvil. It was the anchor, the silent supporter. Its job was to hold the obsidian core, to rotate it precisely, to tilt the platform of the stone to catch the blow. It required a static strength, a passive endurance. The right hand was the hammer. It gripped the dense river stone or the antler billet. It was the delivery system of kinetic energy, the actor, the striker. This asymmetry was the engine of the Paleolithic revolution. One hand to hold the world steady, the other to change it. But now, cast your gaze to the figure sitting slightly apart from the others, perhaps near the mouth of the cave, where the last light of the setting sun paints the walls in ochre and crimson. This is the left-hander. For him, the dance is reversed. The universe of the toolmaker is flipped. The obsidian core rests in his right hand. His anchor is the hand that, for others, is the weapon. He feels the weight of the volcanic glass, the subtle ridges and valleys of its surface, through the calloused skin of his right palm. His left hand holds the hammerstone. It is his left hand that must calculate the arc of violence. Consider the profound cognitive leap required here. The left-hander likely learned this craft by watching a father or an elder. But he could not simply copy what he saw. If he watched a right-handed master, he saw the hammer in the right hand. If he mimicked that directly, using his own weaker right hand to strike, the result would be a clumsy, shattered mess. He had to perform a mental feat of translation. He had to rotate the image in the three-dimensional theater of his mind, reversing the instructions, mapping the teacher's right to his own left. This was the first cognitive gym for the left-handed brain. Every lesson was a puzzle. Every demonstration required a transformation before it could be executed. This constant mental rotation, this necessity of translating the world's default instructions into a personal dialect, may have thickened the connections between his brain's hemispheres even further. He was learning not just to make a tool, but to adapt a system that was not designed for him. And so, the strike begins. The left-hander raises the hammerstone. The motion is fluid, powered by the muscles of the left shoulder and arm. He brings it down. Crack. A flake of obsidian flies off, spinning into the dust. To the untrained eye, the result looks the same. A sharp rock is a sharp rock. But look closer. Look with the eyes of the forensic anthropologist, the deep time detective. The geometry of the strike is different. When a right-hander strikes a core, the arm moves across the body in a specific arc. The wrist twists slightly clockwise at the moment of impact. The flake that detaches bears the mark of this motion. It spirals to the right. The bulb of percussion, the shockwave ripple left in the stone, leans a certain way. But the left-hander approaches the stone from the other side of reality. His strike comes from the left. His wrist rotates counterclockwise. The flake flies with a reversed spin. The fracture lines, those microscopic ripples in the glass that record the shock wave like a seismograph, curve in the opposite direction. The tools he crafts bear the subtle signature of their creator. They are sinistral tools. A hand axe made by a left-hander feels different in the grip. The curvature of the cutting edge, the way the stone has been retouched and sharpened, fits the mechanics of the left hand. If a right-hander were to pick it up, it might feel slightly awkward, the balance just a fraction of an inch off, the thumb groove placed on the wrong side. This difference was more than just a curiosity. It was a survival advantage. In the vast monotony of the Stone Age, where technology remained largely unchanged for 1,000,000 years, variation was a treasure. The left-hander approached the core from a fresh perspective. Because he held the stone in his right hand and struck with his left, he could access angles that were awkward or impossible for the right-hander. He could peel a flake off a difficult corner of the raw material. He could salvage a core that a right-hander might have discarded as exhausted. Imagine a moment of scarcity. The tribe has traveled far from the volcanic sources of obsidian. The raw material is precious. Every ounce of stone must be utilized. A large nodule has been worked down by the right-handers until it is an odd, asymmetrical lump. They cannot find a good platform to strike. Their biomechanics limit the angle of attack. They are about to toss it into the midden heap. The left-hander picks it up. He turns it in his right hand. His brain, wired for this reverse geometry, sees a platform that the others missed. His left hand, moving in its unique arc, can strike that platform cleanly. He strikes. A perfect, razor-sharp scraper falls from the useless rock. He has created value where others saw waste. This was the sinistral advantage in craft. It was the ability to solve the puzzle of the stone from the other side. In a world where survival hung on the edge of a blade, the person who could craft a blade from the impossible angle was a vital member of the clan. Let us linger on the sensory experience of this work. The left-hander works into the night. The fire dies down to glowing embers. The rhythmic clack-clack-clack of the camp has faded as others sleep, but he continues. The obsidian is treacherous. It is sharper than a razor. A careless slip can slice a finger to the bone. The left-hander respects the stone. He knows its temperament. He feels the vibration of the impact travel up his left arm, a shock that resonates in his shoulder. He hears the pitch of the sound. A high, singing ring means the stone is good, without internal flaws. A dull thud means a crack is hidden within. He is listening to the voice of the earth. As he works, the pile of debris around him grows, the debitage. These are the waste flakes, the chips and shards that are too small to be used. They carpet the floor of the cave. Thousands of years later, these piles of waste will be the books that archaeologists read. And in these piles, the story of the left hand is written clearly for those who know how to read it. In the 20th century, archaeologists like Nicholas Toth would sit in laboratories trying to relearn this ancient art. They would nap stone for hours, studying the flakes. They discovered that by looking at the cortex, the rough outer skin of the stone, on the flakes, they could tell the order in which they were removed. and by looking at the skew, they could tell which hand held the hammer. They found that at many ancient sites, from Kubi Fora in Kenya to the caves of Spain, the majority of the flakes were right-oriented. But always, persistently, there was the minority. There were the flakes that spiraled left. There were the hand axes sharpened on the opposite bevel. This is the physical memory of a different grip, carved into the hard geology of our past. It is a stunning realization. We can reach back across 2 million years and shake hands with a specific individual. We can pick up a stone tool found in the sediment of an ancient lake bed and say, "A left-hander sat here. They held the stone so. They struck it so." The stone is a recording device. It captured the motion of a human arm that has been dust for eons. It captured the decision-making of a brain that has long since vanished. It tells us that the left-hander was there, sitting by the fire, participating in the great work of survival. But let us return to the cave. The tool is finished. It is a laurel leaf point, symmetrical to the eye, beautiful in its deadly perfection. The left-hander tests the edge with the pad of his thumb, his left thumb. It grabs the skin, terrifyingly sharp. He hands it to a hunter, a right-hander. The hunter takes it, nodding in approval. He lashes it to a spear shaft. The tool made by the left hand will be thrown by the right. This is the symbiosis of the tribe. The variation in the individual serves the unity of the whole. As the era of stone progresses, the tools become more complex. We move from the simple choppers of the Oldowan to the teardrop symmetry of the Aquilean hand axes, and finally to the delicate, pressure-flaked points of the Solotrian culture. This progression required immense dexterity. It was not just bashing, it was pressure flaking, using an antler tip to push tiny flakes off the edge. For the left-hander, pressure flaking was another translation. To sharpen the right edge of a blade, a right-hander pushes outward. The left-hander pulls inward. The biomechanics are distinct. The resulting edge has a different bite. Some anthropologists speculate that left-handed hide scrapers were prized because the wear pattern suggests they were used with a different motion, perhaps one that was more efficient for certain parts of the tanning process. The left-hander was not just a mimic, he was an innovator. By necessity, he had to invent his own techniques. While the right-handers could rely on tradition, on the way it has always been done, the left-hander had to improvise. Every tool he made was a subtle experiment. Every strike was a test of his own adaptation. This spirit of improvisation may have bled into other areas of life. If you are used to holding the hammer in the wrong hand, you are used to seeing the world differently. When the tribe faced a problem, how to cross a swollen river, how to trap a mammoth, perhaps it was the left-hander who suggested the alternative strategy. Perhaps the mind that had to rotate the image of tool-making was also the mind that could rotate the problem of the hunt. The obsidian chisel is more than a tool. It is a symbol. It represents the hardness of the world that our ancestors faced. It represents the resistance of reality. And the left-hander's ability to shape that obsidian, despite the physiological odds, is a testament to the plasticity of the human spirit. Imagine the sound again. Clack, clack, clack. It is the rhythm of persistence. The left-hander is tired now. His arm aches. The dust of the obsidian coats his skin, glittering like stardust. He is part of the long chain of makers, the line of ancestors who chipped and flaked their way out of the food chain and into the history books. He places the finished tool on the ground. It reflects the firelight, a black mirror. In its surface, warped and rippled by the fracture scars, he sees his own face. He sees the face of the outsider who found a way to be essential. He sees the face of the 10% who survived. The night deepens. The cold presses in against the warmth of the cave. The left-hander wraps his furs tighter around him. He looks at his hands, the creators, the destroyers, the survivors. The left hand, strong and dexterous, rests on his knee. The right hand, the steady anchor, rests on the stone. Tomorrow the hunt begins. Tomorrow the tool he made will bite into the flesh of the bison or the mammoth. But tonight, there is only the satisfaction of the craft. Tonight, there is only the knowledge that he has taken the raw, chaotic heart of the earth and given it shape, leaving his mark, a left-handed mark, on the timeline of the world. As the fire dies, the obsidian cools, holding its edge, waiting for the future. It will wait in the dark for 10,000 years, until a trowel scrapes the earth away and a modern hand picks it up, turning it over, feeling the ghost of the grip that formed it. And across that vast abyss of time, the spark of recognition will jump. We will know him. We will know that he was here. The silent weaver of stone, the breaker of the pattern, the left-hander. Time flows like a river, deep and relentless, carrying us away from the intimate seated quiet of the stone napper's fire and thrusting us into the blinding, adrenaline-soaked arena of the open plain. We have left the sanctuary of the cave. We have stepped out into the era of the Great Hunt, a time when the destiny of our species was written not in ink, but in the dust of the migration trails. The air here vibrates with a different kind of energy. It is no longer the rhythmic clack, clack, clack of stone on stone, but the low, subterranean thunder of a million hooves beating against the hard earth. Picture, if you will, the Serengeti as it was 200,000 years ago. The grass is an ocean of gold, swaying in the hot wind that sweeps down from the highlands. The heat is a physical weight, pressing down on the shoulders, shimmering in mirages that dance on the horizon. Here, life moves in a hypnotic tide. The wildebeest, the antelope, the zebra. They are a single flowing organism, a river of muscle and instinct driven by the ancient rhythm of the rains. And watching this river, standing still as termite mounds in the tall grass, are the hunters. This is the moment where the human body transforms from a scavenger to a projector of force. We are no longer content to crack the bones left behind by the lion. We have decided to reach out across the gap between hunger and feast. We have invented the concept of action at a distance. The spear is not merely a stick sharpened with a flake of stone. It is an elongation of the arm, an extension of the will, a materialized thought that can fly faster than the swiftest runner. To understand the left hand in this epoch, we must first understand the physics of the throw. It is a violent, beautiful ballet of biomechanics. To throw a spear is to turn the body into a whip. Energy must travel from the earth, up through the legs, coiling through the hips, spiraling up the spine, rotating the shoulder, snapping the elbow, and finally releasing through the fingertips. It is a kinetic chain that requires perfect synchronization. For the right-handed majority, this chain was forged in a predictable direction. The left foot steps forward, planting the anchor. The right arm draws back, opening the chest to the sky. The torso twists to the right, loading the potential energy like a drawn bowstring. For aeons, this was the shape of death on the savannah. The prey animals, intelligent and evolved in their own right, learned the geometry of this threat. A gazelle, with its wide-set eyes scanning 270 degrees of the horizon, is not a passive victim. It is a survival machine. Over generations of avoiding the leopard's leap and the crocodile's lunge, The herds also learned to read the human form. They learned the silhouette of a hunter preparing to strike. They learned that the threat usually originated from the right side of the two-legged predator. The flight zone, that invisible circle of safety an animal maintains, became attuned to the standard mechanics of the right-handed throw. But nature, as we have seen, loves a variation. Nature loves the curveball. Enter the left-hander. He stands in the line of hunters, skin dusted with ash to mask his scent, sweat trickling down the valley of his spine. To the casual observer, he is just another silhouette against the sun. But look at his feet. While his brothers plant their left feet to throw, he plants his right. His stance is a mirror image of the line. He is the anomaly in the formation. When the signal is given, a silent hand gesture, or perhaps the low mimicry of a bird call, the line erupts into motion. The right-handers move in unison, a wave of bodies twisting to the right. But the left-hander twists to the left. He draws his spear back into a different quadrant of the air. His body coils in the opposite direction, winding up a spring that spins counterclockwise. This is the moment of the shadow of the spear. Consider the perspective of the prey. An impala, startled by the sudden movement in the grass, reacts with a millisecond-fast reflex. Its brain is a high-speed processor of visual data. It sees the majority of the hunters moving one way. It anticipates the trajectory of the spears coming from the right hands. It calculates the escape route based on 1,000 generations of genetic memory. It jukes to its left, moving away from the predicted path of the missiles. But the left-hander's spear is not following the rules. It launches from the other side of the visual field. It comes from the shadows of perception, a blind spot in the animal's predictive modeling. The angle of approach is slightly different, perhaps 10 or 15 degrees off the standard line. In the geometry of a hunt, where life and death are measured in inches, that difference is an abyss. The impala jukes into the path of the left-handed spear. The weapon arrives a fraction of a second differently than the mind expects, cutting through the air with a slightly different rotation, striking from a vector that feels wrong to the instinctual brain of the prey. It is a chaotic element introduced into a deterministic system. It was here, in the breathless adrenaline of the chase, that the left hand proved it was not a weakness. It was a variation that put meat on the fire. The left-hander was the unexpected variable in the grim mathematics of survival. Let us slow down time and witness this throw. The spear itself is a masterpiece of the era. The shaft is crafted from the heartwood of a slow-growing acacia, straight and dense. It has been hardened in the fire, the moisture driven out until the wood is almost like bone. The tip is a solitrian laurel leaf, a piece of flint napped by the very hands we watched in the cave, hafted with sinew and pine resin. It is heavy, balanced to fly true. The left-hander feels the weight of it. His left arm, the sinistral arm, is thick with muscle. The deltoid is a knotted cord of power. The neural pathways we spoke of earlier, the thick bundle of the corpus callosum, the unique wiring of the motor cortex, are now firing in a symphony of action. He does not think about the throw. The thought is the throw. As he releases, his fingers impart a spin to the shaft. Because it is a left-handed throw, the spear spirals in the opposite direction to those of his kin. It slices the air, stabilizing itself with the gyroscopic force of the spin. It flies alongside the spears of his brothers, but it is distinct. It is the rogue comet in a solar system of orderly planets. The impact is visceral. The sound of the strike, The dull thud of stone entering muscle, the sharp intake of breath from the animal, is the sound of success. The left-hander has secured the protein. And in the Paleolithic economy, protein is everything. It is the fuel for the hungry, energy-expensive brain. It is the builder of strong bones. It is the difference between seeing another sunrise and fading into the dust. Because the left-hander was successful, he was valued. The tribe did not cast him out for his difference. They celebrated him for his results. He was given a share of the kill. He was given a mate. His genes, the complex polygenic recipe that tilted his brain toward the left, were passed on. The left-handed gene, or rather the lack of the right-shift gene, survived because it paid its rent. It earned its keep on the bloody plains of the Pleistocene. But the advantage was not just in the kill, it was in the learning. Imagine the young hunters watching the elders. They see that the left-hander has a different style. They see that sometimes his spear finds the mark when all others miss. This observation teaches the tribe a lesson about flexibility. It teaches them that there is no single correct way to survive. It introduces the concept of diversity as a strength, and let us not forget the defensive advantage of the mirrored stance. The hunt was not always one-sided. Sometimes the predator became the prey. A lioness bursting from the cover of the scrub does not care about handedness. She cares about the throat. When a group of hunters stands in a defensive circle facing outward with spears leveled, the left-hander provides a crucial interlocking field of fire. If everyone holds the spear in the right hand, there is a natural gap, a weakness in the shield wall on the left side of each man. But place a left-hander in the line, and his spear covers that gap. His shield is on the right, covering the neighbor's open side. His spear points left, crossing the field of the man beside him. Together, the right-hander and the left-hander create a crossfire, a lattice of sharp points that is far more difficult to penetrate than a uniform line. Unknowingly, by simply following the dictates of their biology, they have created a superior tactical formation. The anomaly protects the norm. The minority guards the majority. As the sun sets on the savannah, painting the sky in bruises of purple and crimson, the hunters return to the camp. They carry the carcass of the antelope on a pole between them. The mood is jubilant. The fear of starvation has been pushed back for another few days. The left-hander walks with them, his left hand stained with the work of the day. He is tired. The unique torque of his throw puts a different strain on the body. His left shoulder aches. His left hip feels the phantom echo of the plant. He sits by the fire, and as the meat cooks, the smoke drifting up into the infinite starlight, he uses a flake of flint to clean his nails. He holds the flint in his left hand. The others watch him, perhaps with a quiet reverence, perhaps with a lingering confusion. He is one of them, yet he is other. He is the brother who walks in the mirror. But tonight, with bellies full, the difference is not a threat. It is a blessing. This dynamic, the survival of the unexpected, suggests a profound truth about our evolution. We are not a species of clones. We are a species of variants. If the environment were perfectly stable, perfectly predictable, perhaps we would have all evolved to be identical, optimized machines. But the Earth is not stable. The climate shifts. The prey adapts. The viruses mutate. To survive in a chaotic world, a species needs a toolkit of different minds and different bodies. The left-hander is a tool in that kit. By keeping a steady 10% of the population wired differently, nature ensures that when the standard approach fails, there is an alternative ready to step in. When the right-handed spear misses, The left-handed spear is there to catch the error. Generations pass. The bones of these hunters turn to stone, buried under layers of volcanic ash and river sediment. The wooden spears rot away, leaving only the stone tips to tell the story. Archaeologists digging in these strata find the points. They measure the impact fractures. They analyze the wear patterns. And sometimes they find a tip that is broken in a way that suggests a different angle of entry, a different rotation of flight. They hold these stones in their hands, under the fluorescent lights of a modern laboratory, and they feel the ghost of the wind on the savannah. They feel the tension of the coil. They see the shadow of the spear flying from the dark side of the visual field. The legacy of the hunt is still with us. Watch a modern baseball pitcher winding up on the mound. If he is a southpaw, a left-hander, the batter faces the same disorientation that the antelope felt 200,000 years ago. The ball comes from a different release point. The curve breaks in a direction that defies the muscle memory of the right-handed hitter. The advantage of the rare is still in play, echoing through the stadiums of the world, a ritualized reenactment of the life and death drama of the open plains. But let us return to the ancient night. The fire burns low. The sounds of the African night, the whoop of the hyena, the sawing cough of the leopard, draw closer. The tribe huddles together for warmth and safety. The left-hander sleeps, his dominant hand curled under his cheek. In his dreams, perhaps he is still running. Perhaps he is chasing a phantom gazelle that moves in reverse. His brain, that magnificent laterally reversed engine, processes the day's events, storing the memories in a neural map that looks different from his neighbors. He is the keeper of the alternative map. He is the shadow. He is the surprise. He is the reason the tribe will eat tomorrow. As the wheel of the stars turns overhead, marking the passage of eons, the left-hander sleeps the deep, dreamless sleep of the survivor. The spear is laid aside, but the arm that threw it, the arm that broke the symmetry, the arm that introduced chaos to the order of the hunt, remains ready. For the world is changing, the ice is coming, and the adaptability of the 10% will be tested again in the dark, cold caves of the future. The spear was only the beginning. The true weapon is the mind that guides it, the mind that dares to throw from the shadows. The wind shifts now. We leave the cooperative silence of the hunting party, where the spear was a bridge between hunger and feast, and we turn our gaze toward a darker, more intimate horizon. As the great wheel of time turns, grinding the millennia into dust, the landscape of human existence begins to crowd. The vast, empty spaces of the Pliocene are filling. The smoke of one tribe's fire can now be smelled by another. The waterholes, once shared in an uneasy truce by the beasts of the field, become the flickering vital hearts of territorial claim. As humanity grew in number, conflict became the inevitable shadow of our expansion. It was a shadow that lengthened as the sun set on the era of unlimited roaming. Resources were no longer infinite. The grove of fruit trees, the flint quarry, the bend in the river where the salmon run thick, these became prizes. And prizes must be guarded. Prizes must be fought for. It is here, in the rising heat of competition, that the mystery of the left hand reveals its most violent and enduring purpose. Picture, if you will, a clearing in the dry scrublands of the Rift Valley, or perhaps a windswept plateau in the Levant, where Neanderthals and Homo sapiens once eyed each other with wary recognition. The air is thick with a tension that is older than language. It is the tension of the boundary line. Two figures stand apart, circling, their feet stirring up small clouds of red dust that hang suspended in the stillness. This is not the chaotic melee of a brawl. This is the ritual of the duel. It is the collision of two histories, two lineages, two distinct ways of moving through the world. On one side stands the warrior of the majority. Let us call him the right-hander. He is a masterpiece of standard evolution. Every lesson he has learned, every scar on his skin, comes from a world designed for him. Since childhood, he has wrestled with brothers who favored the right. He has sparred with fathers who held the staff in the right. His muscle memory is a vast, unconscious library of standard defenses. He knows the rhythm of the attack before it begins. He knows that when a shoulder drops, the blow will arc from his left, the opponent's right. He knows how to raise his shield to meet the standard trajectory. He is comfortable in the geometry of the mirror, for he has spent his life gazing into it. But opposite him stands the anomaly, the left-hander, the southpaw. He stands differently. His right foot is forward, his body turned at an angle that defies the right-hander's expectations. To the right-hander's eyes, this stance is a visual stutter, a jarring break in the pattern. The shield is on the wrong side. The weapon arm is hidden, tucked away in the shadows of the back stance. The left-hander is a riddle written in flesh and bone, a puzzle that the opponent has mere seconds to solve. In the brutal intimacy of hand-to-hand combat, there is no time for thought. There is only reaction, and reaction is built on prediction. The brain is a prediction engine, constantly running simulations of the next second based on the data of the last million years. The right-hander's brain predicts a blow from the right. It prepares the parry. It tenses the specific muscles needed to block a standard attack. Then the strike comes. It does not come from the open sky of the expected. It comes from the blind spot. The left-hander lunges. His weapon, a heavy club of olive wood, or perhaps a flint dagger lashed to bone, arcs through a trajectory that feels alien, wrong, impossible. It bypasses the right-hander's shield, finding the gap that should not be there. It is a blow delivered from the sinister side, the side of shadows. This is the fighter's hypothesis come to terrifying life. The left-hander survives not because he is stronger. He may be smaller, lighter, less nourished. He survives not because he is faster. He survives because he is rare. He is the glitch in the matrix of combat. He is the unexpected variable in an equation that usually balances out to zero. Let us slow the action down to the speed of a heartbeat. Watch the eyes of the right-hander widen in that fraction of a second before impact. It is the look of cognitive dissonance. His internal model of the world has failed him. The geometric certainty upon which he built his survival has crumbled. The blow lands. The contest ends. The genetic line of the right-hander pauses, perhaps ends, in the dust of that clearing. But the left-hander walks away. He carries with him the spoils of the victory, the water, the mate, the territory. And most importantly, he carries the silent error in his code, the genetic drift that wired his brain in reverse. He will pass this on. His children will inherit the shadow stance. They will inherit the ability to surprise. This dynamic creates a fascinating evolutionary pressure, a phenomenon known to biologists as frequency-dependent selection. It is a delicate, self-correcting balance, a dance of numbers played out over eons. Imagine if the left-handers became too successful. Imagine if they won every fight, sired every child, until the tribe was 50% left-handed. In that world, the advantage would vanish like mist in the morning sun. The right-hander would learn. He would spar with left-handers daily. He would decode the riddle. The element of surprise would be lost, and the southpaw would simply be another variation, offering no edge in the grim calculus of blood. And so, nature maintains the rarity. The advantage exists only because it is uncommon. The left-hander must remain the minority, the 10%, the ghost in the machine. If they rise too high, they lose their power. If they fall too low, the surprise becomes so devastating that they rise again. It is a victory won in the spaces between anticipation and reality, a perpetual oscillation that has kept the trait alive through ice ages and droughts, through the rise of empires and the fall of civilizations. Let us drift deeper into this ancient world, to the time of the Neolithic, when the duel evolved into the skirmish, and the skirmish into the war. The scale of conflict changes, but the mechanics of the hand remain the supreme dictator of life and death. Picture a settlement surrounded by a wooden palisade. It is dawn. The mist clings to the damp earth, smelling of wet thatch and livestock. A raiding party emerges from the forest edge. The alarm is raised, a hollow thud of wood on wood, a cry that pierces the sleep of the village. Men rush to the walls. They crowd into the narrow choke points of the gates. Here, in the crush of bodies, the handedness of a warrior dictates his position in the shield wall. A line of right-handers links shields, left arm to left arm, creating a scale-like barrier of hide and wood. Their right arms are free to stab over the top with spears. But consider the spiral staircase of a tower, or the narrow winding path up a cliff face. In medieval times, castle stairs were built to spiral clockwise going up. This was a deliberate architectural choice, born of the right hand. A defender retreating up the stairs would have his right sword arm free to strike downwards around the central pillar. The attacker, coming up, would have his sword arm blocked by the masonry. The right-handed world built its fortresses to favor the right-handed defender. But what if the attacker is left-handed? He bounds up the stairs. The central pillar does not block his left arm. He can strike around the curve while the defender is hampered. He turns the architecture of the enemy against them. In the siege, in the chaotic breach of the wall, the left-hander is a disruptive force. He breaks the rhythm of the phalanx. He opens holes in the shield wall because his shield pushes where others pull. We must look, too, at the toll this takes on the left-hander. It is not a path of easy glory. To be the anomaly is to be alone. In the training circles of the youth, the left-hander has no one to mirror. He cannot simply copy the movements of the elder. He must reverse them in his mind, translating every lesson. Step with the left, the elder says. The left-hander must step with the right. Hold the shield high on the left, the elder commands. The left-hander must hold it high on the right. This constant mental translation, this friction against the grain of the culture, creates a mind that is fluid, adaptable, and deeply solitary. The left-hander learns early that the world is not built for him. He learns that he must hack the system to survive. This psychological resilience becomes a weapon in itself. While the right-hander relies on the comfort of the standard, the left-hander is forged in the fires of adaptation. There is a loneliness to the southpaw. We see it in the etymology of the words we use, words that carry the fossils of ancient prejudice. Dexter in Latin means right, but it also means skillful, favorable, auspicious. From it, we get dexterity. Sinister in Latin means left. Originally, it simply meant a direction. But over the centuries, carried on the dark tide of superstition, it came to mean evil, unlucky, malicious. Why? Perhaps because of the fear of the unexpected strike. The left-hander was the one who killed you from the blind spot. The left-hander was the one whose handshake felt wrong, whose gesture of peace looked like a preparation for war. In a world of superstitious dread, where every thunderstorm was a god's anger and every drought a curse, the physical anomaly became a moral anomaly. The sinister hand was bound, sometimes literally. We can imagine the Neolithic mother, fearful for her child's soul or social standing, gently tying the left hand to the body, forcing the right hand to take the spoon, the tool, the weapon. Yet, despite this cultural suppression, despite the deep, primal fear of the deviation, the gene persisted. It persisted because when the wolves came, or when the rival tribe crested the hill, the village needed the fighter who could do what the others could not. They needed the sinister strike. The utility of survival outweighed the comfort of conformity. Let us journey to a specific moment, a crystallized memory in the biography of the human race. It is the Bronze Age. The world has discovered metal. The soft clacking of stone has been replaced by the singing ring of copper and tin. We are in the training yard of a great chieftain. The sun beats down on the packed earth. A young warrior is being tested. He is small, wiry, his movements twitchy and fast. He holds a bronze dagger in his left hand. The veteran instructor, a mountain of a man with scars mapping his history on his chest, steps forward. He grins, confident in his bulk, confident in the reach of his spear. The veteran thrusts, a standard, powerful lunge from the right. It is a move he has used to kill 10 men. The young left-hander does not block. He slips. He steps to the outside, to his right, the veteran's left. This is the outside line, a place of safety against a right-hander. But for a left-hander, it is also a place of attack. In one fluid motion, the left-hander parries with his right-hand dagger, an offhand parry that feels weak to the veteran but is geometrically perfect, and thrusts with his left. The bronze tip stops an inch from the veteran's throat. Silence falls over the yard. The veteran blinks, the sweat stinging his eyes. He has been defeated not by strength but by geometry. He has been defeated by the mirror image. In that silence we hear the echo of the frequency-dependent selection. The young warrior is valuable. He will be placed at the flank of the formation. He will be the bodyguard of the king, the one who watches the shadows that the others ignore. He is the left hand of the king, a title that carries both honor and a hint of dangerous separation. This combat advantage extends beyond the handshake of the dagger. Think of the boxer today. The southpaw stance is legendary. A right-handed boxer is used to the jab coming from the left shoulder of his opponent. He slips his head to the right to avoid it. But against a southpaw, the jab comes from the right shoulder. If he slips to the right, he moves directly into the path of the power hand, the left cross. It is a nightmare of angles. The southpaw's lead foot is on the outside of the orthodox fighter's lead foot. This foot placement is the holy grail of positioning. It allows the left-hander to pivot and strike down the center line, while the right-hander is forced to constantly readjust, turning his body to find a target that keeps moving away from his power. This is the ancient memory of the savannah duel, replayed in the boxing rings of Vegas and the judo mats of Tokyo. The visceral discomfort a fighter feels when facing a southpaw, that feeling of being off, of being clumsy, of the world being slightly tilted, is the same feeling that the rival warrior felt 5,000 years ago. It is the feeling of evolution playing a trick on you. But the sword is not the only weapon. As humanity advanced, the nature of conflict shifted from the physical to the political, from the duel of the body to the duel of the mind. And here, too, the left-hander carried a blade. We have spoken of the brain's lateralization. The left-hander's brain is often less strictly divided. The corpus callosum is thicker. The communication between the hemisphere of logic and the hemisphere of emotion is faster, more chaotic, more intense. In the council fires of the tribe, when the elders debated the path of the migration or the justice of a law, the left-hander perhaps offered the perspective that broke the deadlock, while the right-handers followed the linear path of tradition. We have always gone this way, therefore we must go this way. The left-hander might see the lateral solution. What if we go through the mountain? What if we befriend the wolf instead of killing it? This cognitive unexpected strike is just as powerful as the physical one. It attacks the problem from a blind spot. It solves the riddle by changing the rules. This is why, throughout history, we see such a disproportionate number of left-handers in positions of leadership, in the arts, in the chaotic frontiers of revolution. They are the strategic southpaws. They throw ideas from angles that the orthodox mind cannot defend against. But let us return to the visceral, to the bone and the blood. Let us return to the dark caves of the Paleolithic, where the memory of the fight is freshest. Imagine a night where the tribe is sleeping. The fire has burned down to embers. A predator enters, not a lion, but a man from another clan, desperate and armed. He creeps toward the sleeping figures. He holds a heavy stone in his right hand. He approaches a sleeper, intending to strike. The sleeper awakes. It is a left-hander. Instinct takes over. A right-hander would roll to the left to protect their right side or raise their right arm. The attacker expects this, but the left-hander rolls right. He raises his left arm, grasping a tool, a brand from the fire, anything. The movement is a mirror of what the attacker anticipates. The blow misses by an inch. The counterstrike lands. The scream wakes the cave. Chaos erupts. But the tribe survives because the anomaly survived. The one who moved differently saved the night. These moments, these tiny, fractured seconds of violence scattered across millions of years, are the reason the trait endures. Every time a left-hander won a duel, every time they survived a raid because they parried from the wrong side, the gene was stamped a little deeper into the human genome. It was not a stamp of dominance. Never let us forget that. If everyone were left-handed, the left-hander would be ordinary. It was a stamp of the precious minority. It is a haunting thought that our bodies are shaped by the ghosts of these ancient fights. The reason you might be left-handed today, sitting in the safety of a modern room, is because 10,000 years ago, an ancestor of yours stood in a dusty clearing and threw a spear from an angle that the other man did not see coming. You are the legacy of that surprise. You are the echo of that victory. As the centuries rolled on, the nature of war changed. The phalanx gave way to the legion to the knight to the musketeer. The advantage of the unexpected strike diminished as weapons became tools of distance and mass destruction. A bullet does not care about the hand that pulls the trigger in the same way a sword cares about the hand that wields it. And yet, the trait remains. It has not faded. It has not been bred out. It hangs on, stubborn and resilient, at that magic number of 10 to 12%. It is as if nature knows that we might need it again. It is as if the genome is keeping the southpaw in reserve, waiting for the next time the rules of the world change, waiting for the next time we need to strike from the shadows. The dust of the arena settles. the two warriors in our mind's eye fade back into the mists of time. The winner walks away, not with a roar of triumph, but with the quiet, efficient stride of one who knows they are different. The left-hander wipes the sweat from his brow with his left hand. He looks at the horizon, where the storm clouds are gathering. He is ready. He has always been ready. The unexpected strike is not just a move in a fight. It is a philosophy of existence. It is the refusal to be predictable. It is the biological commitment to the element of surprise. And in a universe that is constantly trying to grind life down into a uniform dust, the refusal to be the same is the greatest victory of all. Generations fade into dust, yet the trait remains. It travels silently through the bloodlines, skipping a father, landing on a daughter, hiding in a brother, emerging in a cousin. It is a secret weapon sheathed in the DNA, waiting for the moment when the world tilts, and only the one who stands at the counter-angle can keep their footing. The sun sets on the age of stone and bone. The night of history is long and full of terrors, but in the darkness, the left-hander watches, the shield on the right, the weapon on the left, guarding the blind spot of humanity. Let us retreat now from the dust and adrenaline of the battlefield. Let us leave the unexpected strike and the clash of bronze and bone in the fading light of the training yard. We withdraw from the external world of action, from the sun-bleached savannah and the freezing tundra, to enter a space far more vast and infinitely more mysterious. We enter the inner sanctum of the skull. It is here, within this curved cathedral of bone, in the silent, fluid-filled darkness, that the true story of the left hand is written. It is a story not of muscle and tendon, but of sparks and silence. It is a story of geography, but a geography of the mind, a landscape of valleys and ridges, of deep fissures and soaring peaks, constructed not of earth, but of 86 billion neurons weaving the fabric of consciousness. As the hands specialized over the crushing weight of aeons, so too did the mind. The evolution of the hand was never a solitary journey. It was a duet played with the brain. Every time an ancestor learned to knap a flint with a new precision, the brain grew dense with new connections. Every time a spear was thrown with calculated intent, the neural maps were redrawn. But to understand the unique architecture of the left-hander, we must look at the Great Divide. The human brain is a bifurcated kingdom. It is divided into two hemispheres, the left and the right, separated by a deep, longitudinal fissure, a canyon running down the center of the self. For the vast majority of our species, the governance of this kingdom followed a strict and predictable protocol. The left hemisphere became the seat of the law. It took command of the right hand, the dominant hand of the masses. It became the home of the linear, the sequential, the analytical, and most crucially, it became the home of the word. In the deep past, as the grunts and gestures of the primates evolved into the complex syntax of human speech, language sought a home. It needed a place of order. It needed a neural processor capable of handling the rapid-fire sequencing of sounds, consonant, vowel, consonant, that creates meaning. The left hemisphere, already adept at the sequential motor control of the right hand, was the natural landlord. It became the dominant hemisphere. In this standard architecture, the right hemisphere was left to govern the silence, the spatial, the emotional, the holistic, the music of the spheres. But for the left-hander, the map was often redrawn. Imagine the developing brain of a left-handed child in a Neolithic settlement. Outside the village is a cacophony of rhythmic work, the pounding of grain, the chipping of stone, all performed with a right-handed cadence. But inside the child's skull, a silent rebellion is taking place. The genetic instruction to standardize has been muted. The architecture is fluid. For the left-hander, the seat of the soul is not so easily fixed. While the right hand is controlled by the left brain, the left hand is controlled by the right brain. This we know. But the location of the self, the location of language, of logic, of the inner narrator, becomes a glorious mystery. In many left-handers, language does not settle obediently into the left hemisphere. It may migrate to the right, finding a home in the territories usually reserved for spatial awareness and emotion. Or, even more profoundly, it may settle in both hemispheres. This is the condition of bilateral representation. It is a rare and beautiful state of being, where the voice of the mind echoes in both canyons. It is a neurological symmetry that defies the standard asymmetry of the species. The left-handed brain becomes a testament to neural flexibility, a plastic adaptability that refuses to be pinned down. This was not just a mirroring of function, it was a rewiring of consciousness. Let us transport ourselves back to the quiet moments of the Paleolithic night. The tribe has eaten. The fire has burned down to a bed of glowing, breathing coals, casting a soft red light on the sleeping faces of the clan. The rhythmic breathing of the group creates a collective lullaby. But one figure remains awake. It is the left-hander. They sit wrapping a piece of leather around a stone tool, their left hand working with a dexterity that seems to flow from a different source. As they work, their mind wanders. In the standard brain, the interpreter, the part of us that tells the story, that makes sense of the day, is locked firmly in the left hemisphere, often cut off from the brooding, dreamlike imagery of the right. But the left-handed mind perhaps wanders down different cognitive paths. Because their brain organization is less rigidly lateralized, the walls between the rooms of the mind are thinner. The door between logic and intuition is left ajar. Consider the corpus callosum. Deep within the center of the brain, buried beneath the heavy folds of the cortex, lies a bridge. It is a thick white band of nerve fibers, a cable of 200 million axons. This is the corpus callosum. It is the superhighway of information that connects the left hemisphere to the right. It is the only way the two halves of the self can speak to one another. In the right-handed majority, this bridge is robust, yes, but it often strictly regulates the traffic. It keeps the analytical apart from the emotional, ensuring that one does not overwhelm the other. But scientific observation, and the poetic inference of our history, suggests that in the left-hander, this bridge is often thicker. It is more developed. It is a wider road. Why? Because the left-handed brain is living in a cross-wired world. The left-hander lives in a physical environment built for the right hand, forcing them to constantly translate the world's geometry. They must use their non-dominant hand, the right, more often than a right-hander uses their left. They are forced into a state of functional ambidexterity. This constant demand for coordination between the two sides of the body requires a constant firing of signals across the bridge. Over a lifetime and over generations of selection, this builds a superhighway of connectivity. What does this mean for the inner life of the ancestor? It means that the left-handed mind possesses a unique interhemispheric transfer time. Information flows faster and more freely between the domains of the analytical and the artistic. In the silence of that Paleolithic night, as the left-hander looks up at the scatter of the Milky Way, they are perhaps perceiving the stars differently. The right hemisphere sees the pattern, the great bear, the hunter. It feels the awe of the infinite. The left hemisphere counts the stars, names them, creates a myth to explain them. In the left-hander, these two processes, the feeling and the naming, occur almost simultaneously, blended into a single, rich experience of reality. This unique architecture suggests that left-handedness was never just about the hand. It was about the way the world was perceived, processed, and understood. It was a different lens through which to view the cosmos. We must treat this brain not as a machine, but as a character in our drama. It is a survivor. It is a biological innovation that added depth to the collective human psyche. Imagine a crisis in the Pleistocene. The herds have vanished, the rains have failed. The standard strategies, the knowledge stored in the left hemisphere's linear library of what we did last year, are failing. The tribe faces starvation. The elders sat in council, repeating the old wisdoms, retracing the old maps. Their brains, efficient and specialized, run along the tracks of established memory. But the left-hander's brain is wired for divergent thinking. This is a psychological term for the ability to generate multiple solutions to a single problem, to make unexpected connections between unrelated ideas. Because their neural networks are more distributed, because their bridge is wider. They can pull information from the darkest corners of the right hemisphere and bring it into the light of the left. The left-hander speaks. "We will not go to the river," they say. "We will go to the caves of the high mountains." "Why?" the elders ask. "We have never found water there." The left-hander cannot explain it with linear logic. It is a hunch. It is a feeling born of a subtle pattern recognition. The way the birds were flying 3 moons ago, the smell of the wind, the texture of the moss, all synthesized in the holistic processing of the right brain and delivered instantly across the bridge to the speech centers. They lead the tribe to the mountains. They find water. The anomaly saves the bloodline. This is the evolutionary power of the atypical brain. By maintaining a population with different neural architectures, nature ensures that the species has a cognitive reserve. We are not all thinking the same way. We are a portfolio of diverse intelligences. The right-hander preserves the tradition, the sequence, the order. The left-hander provides the leap, the lateral shift, the connection. But we must also speak of the cost. Evolution is a merchant. It never gives without taking. The rewiring of the brain is a high-risk endeavor. When you scramble the map, you risk losing the path. In the architecture of the left-handed brain, because the dominance is shared or reversed, there is a higher incidence of what we call learning differences. In the ancient world, this might have manifested as a child who was slow to speak, or a hunter who struggled with the specific knot-tying sequences that others found simple. We can imagine the frustration of the young ancestor. The tribe sits in a circle, chanting the oral history, a long linear recitation of names and battles. The right-handed children memorize it easily. Their left hemispheres are built for this sequential storage. But the left-handed child's mind drifts. The words blur. They see the images of the battles, the color of the blood, the fear in the eyes. But the sequence of names slips away like water through fingers. They might have been scolded. They might have been seen as slow. But this same child, later that night, might carve a figure into a mammoth tusk with a grace and emotional depth that brings the elders to tears. They might not hold the list of names, but they hold the soul of the history. This connection between left-handedness and creativity is not a modern myth. It is a whisper from our biology. The thicker corpus callosum allows for a greater infusion of emotion into thought and thought into action. It is the architecture of the artist, the shaman, the storyteller who weaves not just facts, but feelings. Let us look closer at the planum temporale, a specific triangular patch of the brain's cortex involved in language. In most people, it is significantly larger on the left side. In the chimpanzee, our distant cousin, this asymmetry is already present, a faint echo of the future. But in the left-hander, this patch is often more symmetrical, equal in size on both sides. This symmetry is a physical echo of the silence before the breaking of the mirror. It is a retention of the primordial balance. It suggests that the left-hander is, in a way, more connected to the ancient pre-linguistic state of mind, a state of pure perception, unburdened by the relentless categorization of language. Perhaps this is why, in the history of our species, the left-hander has so often been the outsider, the mystic, the one who walks between the worlds. Their brain is literally built to straddle the divide. Consider the phenomenon of mirror writing. Leonardo da Vinci, the most famous left-hander of history, filled his notebooks with script that flowed from right to left, readable only in a mirror. Was this just a trick to keep secrets? Or was it the natural flow of a brain that was wired in reverse? In the neurological landscape of the left-hander, the direction of thought can flow upstream. In a cave in France, deep in the limestone dark, we find hand stencils sprayed in ochre against the wall. Many of them are left hands, meaning the stencil was made by holding the pigment pipe in the right hand. No, usually the stencil is the left hand, meaning the right held the pipe. But wait. If the left hand is the active hand, perhaps they placed the right hand on the wall and sprayed with the left. Studies show a high proportion of right-hand stencils, implying a left-handed artist holding the pigment. Whatever the hand, the art itself is a projection of the mind. The cave paintings, the swirling bison, the running horses, are not static. They are fluid. They use the curvature of the rock to create 3D effects. This requires a spatial intelligence, a right hemisphere dominance that is often liberated in the left-handed brain. The architecture of thought is not a static building. It is a living, changing structure. And for the left-hander, that structure is a labyrinth of unexpected doors and secret passages. As the millennia passed and humanity moved from the Stone Age to the Iron Age, this cognitive diversity became even more crucial. The world became more complex. Problems became more abstract. We needed minds that could see the invisible geometry of the universe. Is it a coincidence that so many of the great mathematicians and architects of history have been left-handed? When we look at the brain scans of the mathematically gifted, we often see that same enhanced connectivity, that same ability to engage both sides of the brain to solve a spatial equation. The left-hander in the Neolithic village, stacking stones to create a dolmen or a burial chamber, was perhaps calculating the stress and load not with a linear formula, but with a felt sense of balance. A physical intuition wired directly from the right hemisphere to the left hand. They felt the weight of the stone in their nerves. They understood the gravity. But let us return to the image of the bridge, the corpus callosum. It is the most poetic structure in the human body. It is the physical manifestation of connection. In a world that is constantly trying to divide, us versus them, black versus white, right versus wrong, the left-handed brain is built on the principle of integration. It is a brain that refuses to let one side dominate completely. It is a brain that demands a dialogue between the opposing forces of our nature. In the quiet of the night, when the only sound is the wind in the trees, the left-handed ancestor lies awake. Their thoughts are not a straight line. They are a web. They are thinking about the hunt tomorrow, yes. But they are also thinking about the shape of the cloud that passed the moon. They are thinking about the feeling of the fur against their skin. They are thinking about the sound of the river. All of these inputs are swirling together, crossing and recrossing the white bridge, creating a tapestry of consciousness that is rich, dense, and utterly unique. This is the legacy of the silent symmetry being broken. We broke the mirror to build a machine of language and tools. But in the 10%, nature kept the mirror intact, or rather, shattered it into a kaleidoscope. And so, the architecture of thought was expanded. The human species did not just get a better hammer. We got a wider lens. We got a mind that could look at the same stars and see a different constellation. As the fire dies down and the cold of the ice age presses against the skin of the tent, the left-hander finally sleeps. But even in sleep, the brain is active. The sparks are flying across the bridge. The dreams of the left-hander are perhaps more vivid, more chaotic, filled with a symbolism that rises from the deep, unspoken wells of the right hemisphere. They dream of a world that is not yet born. They dream of tools that have no name. They dream of a language that is not spoken, but sung. And when they wake, they will bring a piece of that dream into the daylight. They will chip it into the flint. They will paint it on the wall. They will weave it into the story of the tribe. The hands specialized, yes, but the mind expanded. And in the left-handed brain, we find the proof that humanity was never meant to be a single note. We were meant to be a chord, a complex, dissonant, beautiful harmony of different minds working together to survive the long, dark night of history. The error in the code was not an error at all. It was a door, and the left hand held the key. The smoke from the communal fire rises in a lazy, twisting column, disappearing into the vast, star-dusted canopy of the Pleistocene night. We have spent much of our journey in the realm of the individual, the solitary napper chipping stone in the silence of the cave, the lone hunter throwing the spear across the blinding savannah, the duelist facing his rival in the red dust of the arena. But survival, true deep-time survival, is rarely a solitary act. A lone human on the Ice Age tundra is not a conqueror. They are prey. They are a flicker of heat waiting to be extinguished by the wind. To understand the persistence of the left hand, we must widen our lens. We must pull back from the microscopic wars of the genome and the adrenaline of the fight, and look at the circle of faces illuminated by the firelight. We must look at the tribe, for it is here, in the complex, interwoven fabric of the community, that the story of humanity is truly written. Survival is a tapestry woven from the threads of the many, a collective warmth generated by bodies pressed together against the dark. And within this tapestry, the left-hander is a distinct and vital thread. A profound question hangs over the anthropology of the hand, a question that has puzzled scholars and dreamers alike. If the left hand offered such a devastating advantage in combat, the unexpected strike we spoke of, why did it not conquer the world? If the southpaw was the survivor of the duel, why did their children not inherit the earth entirely? Why did the ratio not drift upward to 50%, creating a species of perfect ambidexterity, or flip entirely to make us a race of left-handers? Conversely, if the world was built for the right hand, if the tools, the stairs, the very language favored the majority, why did the left hand not fade into extinction? Why did natural selection, usually so ruthless in pruning the inefficient, not edit this trait out of the code of life? For tens of thousands of years across every continent, from the frozen steppes of Siberia to the jungles of the Amazon, the ratio has remained hauntingly constant, 10 to 12%. It is a biological constant, as steady as the rhythm of the tides or the phases of the moon. It is a frequency that nature has stubbornly defended against all odds. The answer lies in the delicate balance of the tribe. It lies in the concept of the evolutionary stable strategy. Nature, in her infinite and silent wisdom, calculated the perfect dosage. Imagine a society composed entirely of left-handers. In such a world, the element of surprise in combat would vanish instantly. Every warrior would move the same way. Every angle would be predictable. The sinistral advantage is a currency that only has value because it is rare. If everyone is a counterfeit, the coin is worthless. But equally, a society with no left-handers would be brittle. It would lack the diversity of thought, the alternative geometry of problem-solving, and the unique physical synergies that we are about to explore. It would be a monoculture, and like all monocultures, it would be vulnerable to a sudden shift in the wind. So the great weaver of evolution found the equilibrium. The left-hander became the essential minority. They became the spice in the stew of humanity. Not the base broth, but the sharp, distinct flavor that preserves and enhances the whole. They were integrated into the social fabric not despite their difference, but because that difference created a stronger, more resilient whole. Let us descend into the daily life of the ancestors to witness this synergy in motion. We move to a winter encampment in the shadow of a great glacier. The wind howls outside, a living thing that claws at the hides of the shelter, but inside there is industry. The tribe is processing a kill, a woolly mammoth, a mountain of flesh and bone and fur that must be transformed into survival. This is a task of immense physical labor, requiring the coordinated effort of every hand. Watch two figures working on a massive hide. It is stretched taut between wooden frames, stiff and heavy. To make it pliable, to turn it into the clothing that will keep a child from freezing, it must be scraped. Hour after hour, the fat and membrane must be removed with a stone scraper. The two workers stand face to face on opposite sides of the hide. One is a right-hander. The other is a left-hander. If two right-handers stood facing each other, their movements would mirror in a way that is geometrically clunky. Their dominant hands would work on diagonal quadrants, or they would have to shift their bodies awkwardly to cover the same ground. But watch the right-hander and the left-hander. They are a mirror image come to life. As the right-hander sweeps his arm from right to left, the left-hander sweeps from left to right. They meet in the center. They pull away to the edges. They work in a perfect, rhythmic concert, a symmetry of action that covers the entire surface of the hide without wasted motion. They are like the two hands of a single giant body, operating with a fluidity that no two identical workers could match. The scraper in the left hand catches the rough patch that the scraper in the right hand missed. The angle of the left-handed stroke cuts against the grain in a way that complements the right-handed stroke. They are not competing. They are completing. In the grueling marathon of the scrape, where calories are precious and time is life, this efficiency is not a luxury. It is a survival mechanism. The left-hander, often isolated in the duel, finds their true home here in the partnership. The anomaly fits into the norm like a key into a lock. Let us move to the construction of the shelter itself. We are in the Neolithic now, or perhaps the Mesolithic, building a structure of saplings and reed mats. The frame must be tied. The knots must be secure against the gale. Knot tying is a handed task. The twist of the wrist, the loop of the fiber, it follows the dominance of the brain. A knot tied by a right-hander spirals one way, a knot by a left-hander spirals the other. Imagine a team lashing the roof beams. If every knot is tied the same way, spiraling in the same direction, the structure has a uniform tension. It has a grain. Under the stress of a storm, that grain might become a fault line. The torque of the wind might untwist the knots if it catches them at the wrong angle. But enter the left-hander. They tie their knots with a Z-twist instead of an S-twist. They tighten the lashings from the opposite torque. When a structure is built by a mixed crew, the tensions oppose and cancel each other out. The roof becomes locked in a grip that is tighter than the sum of its parts. The diversity of the hands creates a physical lock, a jamming of the fibers that holds firm when the blizzard screams. This is the silent physics of cooperation. The tribe does not know the mathematics of torque, but they know that when the left helps bind the roof stays on. They know that the basket woven by the mixed hands holds water better. The error in the code becomes the strength in the wall. And what of the hunt? We have spoken of the spear, but let us speak of the formation. Survival on the open plain is about the field of view. It is about the panopticon, the ability to see everywhere at once. A human has a limited peripheral vision. We are predators with eyes in the front of our heads, designed to focus, not to scan 360 degrees like the pigeon. When the hunting party moves through the tall grass, or when the warriors stand guard over the sleeping camp, they form a circle or a line. If every man is right-handed, holding the spear in the right and the shield in the left, there is a natural bias to the formation. The attention drifts right. The shield blocks the view to the left. There is a blind drift in the collective gaze. But place the left-handers at the flanks. Place them at the edges of the line. The left-hander holds the weapon on the left. Their body is turned to open up the view to the left side of the world. They cover the blind spot of the right-hander beside them. They are the watchers of the sinister side. In the Roman legions, thousands of years later, there is evidence that left-handers were sometimes placed at specific corners of the testudo formation to ensure the shield lock was seamless. But long before Rome, on the muddy banks of the Omo River, this strategy was already written in instinct. The left-hander guards the flank. They look where the others do not. They are the peripheral sentinels. In a world of leopards and rival clans, the tribe that sees the threat coming from the shadows is the tribe that lives to see the dawn. The left-hander was the biological solution to the problem of the blind spot. Now let us soften the focus. Let us move from the hard work of the hide and the spear to the tender intimacy of the hearth. Let us look at the mother and the child. This is the cradle of evolution. For millions of years, human mothers and fathers have carried their infants. And for millions of years, a fascinating bias has existed. The vast majority of mothers, 70 to 85%, regardless of their own handedness, cradle the baby on the left side of the body. Why? The theories are poetic and biological. By holding the child on the left, the baby's ear is pressed against the mother's heart. The rhythmic thrum of the heartbeat, a sound the child knew in the womb, soothes the infant. It is the first music of existence. Furthermore, the left side of the visual field connects to the right hemisphere of the mother's brain, the emotional, intuitive side. By holding the baby on the left, the mother can better read the emotional state of the child's face. But what of the left-handed mother? She faces a unique negotiation of biology. Her dominant hand is the left. If she cradles on the left, her working hand is occupied. She cannot easily crush grain, or sharpen a stick, or defend herself while holding the child. Observation suggests that left-handed mothers are more likely to cradle on the right or to switch back and forth. This seems like a small detail, a trivial domestic variation. But in the deep time of the Paleolithic, nothing is trivial. A child raised on the right hip sees the world from a different angle. They look over the mother's right shoulder. They see the tasks performed by the mother's active left hand up close. This early exposure to sinistrality, to the reversed motion of the world, might spark that neural flexibility we spoke of in the previous chapter. And in the communal rearing of the tribe, allo-parenting, the baby is passed from hand to hand. The infant experiences the strong, sure grip of the right-handed aunt, and then the different, equally sure grip of the left-handed uncle. They feel the difference in the muscle tension, the difference in the sway of the walk. This variety is an education for the developing nervous system. It teaches the infant, before they even have words, that the human form is capable of variation. It prepares them for a complex world. The left-hander in the nursery is the first teacher of diversity. Let us go deeper into the social fabric, into the realm of the invisible. We have spoken of the physical, but what of the emotional? What of the role of the left-hander as the social weaver in the council of the tribe? We established that the left-handed brain often possesses a thicker corpus callosum, a faster integration of logic and emotion. In the high-stakes politics of a small tribe, where a feud can mean death for everyone, this cognitive trait is a resource. Imagine a dispute by the fire. Two hunters are arguing over a kill. The right-handed mind, often driven by linear binary logic, sees a winner and a loser. It sees mine and yours. The tension rises. Spears are gripped tighter. The left-hander steps in. Perhaps they are the shaman, the storyteller, or simply the respected elder who sits a little differently. Their brain, accustomed to seeing the world from the other side, accustomed to translating the reverse, can perhaps see the third path. They can see the synthesis. Because they have spent their entire lives adapting to a world that doesn't fit them, they are masters of adaptation. They are the diplomats of the genome. They suggest a compromise that the rigid linear mind missed. They weave the frayed ends of the argument back together. It is a romantic notion, perhaps, but it aligns with the biological reality of the interconnected mind. If the left-hander is the bridge builder in their own brain, it follows that they might be the bridge builder in the social brain of the clan. We see this echo in the modern world, where a disproportionate number of presidents, leaders, and revolutionaries have been left-handed. From Alexander the Great, reputedly, to Napoleon, to a striking run of recent American presidents. Is it just chance? Or is there something about the southpaw mind, the willingness to stand apart, the ability to process complex, conflicting data that draws them to the helm? In the Paleolithic, this leadership might not have been a crown, but a burden. The left-hander was the one sent to negotiate with the neighboring tribe because they were other. They were the ones sent to explore the new valley. They were the expendable essential probe. Generations pass. The glaciers retreat, grinding the mountains into dust. The great herds dwindle. The tribe settles. They build walls of stone. They plant the first seeds of einkorn wheat. The world changes from a world of motion to a world of stasis, and still, the left-hander remains. They are there in the harvest, swinging the scythe. Watch the line of reapers. If they all swing right to left, they can move in a staggered line. If a left-hander joins, they must stand at the end of the row, swinging left to right, or they will clash blades. This physical reality forces the left-hander to the edge. They become the bookend of the harvest. They define the boundary of the work party. This position, on the periphery, allows them to see the field in a way the others cannot. They are the first to see the storm coming over the hills. They are the first to see the wolf stalking the gleaners. Even in the mundane, repetitive labor of agriculture, the trait dictates a special role. They are the closers. They are the ones who tidy the edge that the others leave ragged. We must also consider the gene-culture coevolution. The tribe protects the gene, and the gene protects the tribe. If the left-handers were merely freaks or burdens, they would have been left to the wolves in a hard winter. The fact that they were fed, clothed, and mated tells us that the tribe understood their value. They understood it not with science, but with story. Perhaps they told myths of a hero with the left hand who stole fire from the gods. Perhaps they believed that the left hand had a special connection to the spirit world, a belief that persisted into the sinister superstitions of later ages, but likely started as a reverence for the magical otherness. To be the social weaver is to be part of the pattern, yet distinct from it. It is to be the thread of gold in a tapestry of wool. Imagine the old one, the left-handed grandmother, teaching a child to knap flint. She cannot guide his hands directly if he is right-handed. She must sit opposite him. She becomes his mirror. "Look at me," she says, her voice cracking like dry wood. "Do as I do, but across." The child watches. He learns to transpose. He learns to think abstractly. The interaction between the right-handed student and the left-handed teacher is a spark of cognitive evolution. It forces the brain to work harder, to build new pathways of understanding. In this way, the presence of the left-hander made the entire tribe smarter. They acted as a catalyst for cognitive complexity. By simply existing, by simply doing things differently, they forced the majority to question the only way. They prevented the stagnation of the human mind. Night falls again on the ancient world. The work is done. The shelter is tied. The hide is tanned. The harvest is gathered. The tribe gathers for the sleep that will knit their bodies back together. They lie in a heap of furs, a jumble of limbs. It is a pile of puppies, a huddle of warmth. In this tangle, there is no left or right. There is only the collective heat. But if you look closely, you can see the subtle geometry of the pile. The right-handers curl one way, protecting their hearts. The left-handers curl the other. They fit together like spoons. The curve of one back fits the arch of another's stomach. The left-hander is not an outcast. They are the puzzle piece that completes the picture. They are the 10% that makes the 100% whole. As the narrator of this biography of the body, we must pause to honor this balance. It is a fragile, beautiful thing. It is a reminder that uniformity is not strength. Conformity is not survival. The strength of the human species lies in its variability, in its ability to contain multitudes. The left-hander, the social weaver, the flank guard, the mirror worker, stands as a testament to the wisdom of the exception. They are the living proof that nature loves a variation as long as that variation serves the family. Sleep now, knowing that the tribe is safe. The right hand holds the spear, and the left hand watches the shadow. The knot is tied from both sides. The weave is tight. And in the silence of the genome, the ancient agreement holds. The majority will lead, but the minority will secure the way. The balance is kept. The 10% endures. The wind shifts now. We leave the cooperative warmth of the huddled tribe, where the left-hander was the weaver and the watcher, and we step into a colder, more abstract landscape. We step out of the realm of pure survival and into the realm of the human mind, a place of symbols, of laws, and of shadows. As the great glaciers retreated and the forests reclaimed the earth, humanity began to build something more enduring than the bone shelter or the flint axe. We began to build culture. We began to build the invisible architecture of belief. But in this new world of rigid structures and sacred laws, the anomaly of the left hand was no longer viewed simply as a biological variation or a combat advantage. It began to be viewed as a disruption. As language developed, spiraling out of the simple grunts of the hunt into the complex tapestries of myth and judgment, a shadow was cast upon the minority. The different became the wrong. The deviation became the danger. We are entering the era of the stigma. It began, perhaps, with the sun. Picture the Neolithic farmer standing in his field at dawn, facing the east, facing the rising light that brings life to the grain. In the northern hemisphere, where so much of our history was written, the sun moves across the southern sky. It arcs to the right. To the ancient mind, obsessed with patterns and hungry for meaning, the right became associated with the path of the sun, with the day, with life, with the warmth of the divine. And the left? The left was the north. The left was the cold wind. The left was the direction of the setting sun, the creeping dark, the unknown. In this cosmic alignment, the hands were assigned their moral poles. The right hand, the hand of the majority, the hand that held the spear and the plow, became the hand of truth. It was the dexter, the skilled, the favorable. The left hand, the minority, the hand that moved against the grain of the sun, became the sinister. Listen to the whisper of that word across the centuries. Sinister. In the original Latin, it simply meant on the left side, a pocket in the toga, a bend in the river. But words are vessels that fill with the prejudices of their speakers. Slowly, inexorably, sinister, filled with darkness. It came to mean unlucky, then malicious, then evil. This was not a singular event, but a slow accretion of suspicion, like silt building up in a riverbed until it chokes the flow. Across the globe, in languages separated by oceans and mountains, the same story was etched into the vocabulary. In Sanskrit, the right is dakshina, meaning capable and honest. The left is vama, meaning wicked. In the icy fjords of the north, the right is the straight, the law. The left is the lift, the weak, the broken. In French, it becomes gauche, the awkward, the clumsy. The left-hander, once the celebrated hunter who brought down the gazelle from the blind spot, was now trapped in a web of words that defined their very existence as an error. Let us zoom in from the etymological map to the dusty reality of a Neolithic village. The year is 5000 BCE. The place is a settlement of mud brick houses near the banks of the Euphrates. The air smells of baking bread and the dung of domesticated goats. We find a child, perhaps 5 summers old, sitting in the courtyard. Let us call him the little left. He is reaching for a bowl of grain, instinct, deep and ancient, guiding the neurons of his motor cortex, moves his left hand forward. It is a fluid, natural motion dictated by the wiring of his brain in the womb. But before his fingers can touch the clay, a hand strikes his wrist. It is the hand of the elder, the grandmother, the keeper of the custom. She does not strike out of malice, but out of fear. In her world, the left hand is the unclean hand. It is the hand reserved for the hygiene of the body, for the wiping away of waste. To touch food with it is not just dirty, it is a spiritual violation. It is to invite the demon into the belly. "Use the true hand," she whispers, her voice sharp with the anxiety of the superstitious. She takes the spoon and forces it into his right hand, his clumsy, reluctant, weak hand. Picture the confusion in the child's eyes. To him, the left hand is the strong one. It is the hand that wants to paint, to throw, to hold. The right hand feels like a sleeping limb, heavy and unresponsive. Yet, the world, the entire crushing weight of the tribe's history, is telling him that his internal reality is a lie. This is the mark of the outsider. It is the moment the mirror is forcibly glued back together. For the left-hander, childhood became a battlefield of correction. Every meal was a test. Every ritual was a minefield. When the shaman blessed the tribe, he used his right hand. When the men swore oaths of loyalty, they raised their right hands. To raise the left was to swear a false oath, to signal betrayal. The bar Sinister, a band running from the top left to the bottom right on a coat of arms, would later denote bastardy, a break in the legitimate line. Imagine the psychological toll of this relentless correction. The left-handed child learned early that their natural impulse was wrong. They learned that to be themselves was to be shameful. They were forced to suppress the most basic physical urges of their body. And yet, this chapter is not a tragedy. It is a story of profound resilience. It is a story of how the human spirit, like water, finds a way through the crack in the stone. The left-hander did not vanish. The gene did not blink out. Instead, the left-hander adapted. Forced to use the right hand for the spoon, the pen, and the handshake, the left-hander developed a forced ambidexterity. Their brains, already plastic and interconnected, were pushed to new levels of flexibility. The left-handed child in the village learned to eat with the right hand to please the grandmother, but when he ran into the woods to skip stones on the river, the left hand exploded into action, joyous and free. He became a creature of two worlds, the public right and the secret left. This dual existence forged a unique kind of mind. The left-hander learned to translate the world's instructions. When the elder showed him how to weave a basket, demonstrating with the right hand, the child had to mentally reverse the image. He had to say to himself, "He goes under, I must go over. He twists clockwise, I must twist counterclockwise." This constant mental rotation, this daily puzzle solving, honed the spatial reasoning centers of the brain. It is like lifting weights for the mind. While the right-handed child simply mimicked, the left-handed child analyzed, deconstructed, and reconstructed. They became the silent engineers of their own adaptation. Let us drift forward in time to the classical age. We stand in the marble silence of a Greek temple. The air is thick with frankincense. The augurs, the priests who read the will of the gods in the flight of birds, stand on the steps. They look to the sky. If the eagle flies from the right, it is a blessing. If it flies from the left, it is an ill omen. The left-hander standing in the crowd feels the weight of this cosmic judgment. Even the birds betray him. But look closer at the left-hander. He is often the artist carving the frieze on the temple wall. He is the stonemason whose sinister chisel finds the angle that the others cannot. He is the outlier who, because he is excluded from the rigid center of the ritual, finds his place on the periphery, observing, thinking, creating. There is a theory, whispered by historians of the mind, that this exclusion fostered a cognitive independence. If the herd tells you that your body is wrong, and you know in your marrow that it is right, you learn to mistrust the herd. You learn to trust your own internal compass. This is the outsider's gift. It is the willingness to stand apart. It is the grit that forms the pearl. In the Middle Ages, the shadow grew darker. The Church, inheriting the solar bias of the ancients, codified the right as the side of God. Jesus sits at the right hand of the Father. The devil, the trickster, watches from the left. In the flickering candlelight of a medieval scriptorium, we see a monk hunched over a manuscript. He is left-handed. But the quill is designed for the right hand. The nib is cut to flow with a right-handed pull. If he writes with his left, his hand smudges the fresh ink, dragging through the sacred words he has just inscribed. So he forces himself. He learns to write with the right. But look at the margins. Look at the illuminations, the grotesque and beautiful doodles of dragons and vines. Here, perhaps, the left hand was allowed to play. Here, the repressed creativity bubbled up. The stigma was so powerful that it shaped the very clothes we wear. Look at the buttons on a shirt. Men's buttons are on the right, women's on the left. Why? One theory holds that men dressed themselves, using the right hand to button, while wealthy women were dressed by maids, who, facing them, used their right hand to button the left-sided buttons. The world was built by the right hand, for the right hand. Scissors, can openers, gear shifts, violin chin rests, all are subtle, silent enforcers of the majority rule. For the left-hander, the physical world is a landscape of small, daily obstacles. The handle of the door turns the wrong way. The smudge of graphite on the side of the hand is the silver badge of the left-handed student. But obstacles are teachers. The left-hander developed a workaround mentality. They learned to approach the door differently. They learned to hook their wrist to avoid the ink. They learned to play the guitar upside down if they had to. This relentless adaptation bred a specific kind of toughness. It is the toughness of the willow that bends in the wind, but does not break. It is the quiet fortitude of the minority who knows they must work twice as hard to achieve the same result. And sometimes, the outsider fought back. We see flashes of this in the history of warfare. We spoke of the unexpected strike, but now we speak of the unexpected mind. The left-hander, accustomed to thinking differently, often became the strategist who broke the rules. Consider Joan of Arc. Some accounts describe her wielding her banner in her left hand, her sword in her right, or vice versa. She was an anomaly in every sense, a woman in armor, a peasant leading armies. Did her potential left-handedness, or ambidexterity, contribute to her feeling of being set apart, of hearing voices that others could not? Was her brain wired for the other, more open to the intuitive lightning of divine inspiration? Or consider the left-hand path in mysticism. While the orthodox religion walked the right-hand path of law and order, the mystics, the shamans, the ones who sought direct, chaotic contact with the divine, were said to walk the left. It was dangerous, it was sinister, but it was also where the magic lived. The left-hander became the archetype of the witch, the wizard, the seer. Why? Because they physically mirrored the Widdershins movement, against the sun, against the clock. To stir the pot counterclockwise was to undo the fabric of reality. The left-hander did this naturally. They were the living embodiment of the reversal. In the hysteria of the witch trials, a mark on the left side of the body was often seen as damning. The left-hander had to be careful. They had to hide their nature. They had to pass. This necessity of hiding created a rich inner life. When you cannot show your true self to the world, you build a cathedral inside your own skull. You populate it with the thoughts and feelings that you cannot express with your hands. This might explain why so many actors, comedians, and artists are left-handed. They are the professional observers. They are the ones who have spent a lifetime watching the normals and figuring out how they tick. They are the mimics, the translators, the ones who stand on the outside looking in. Let us return to the image of the lonely child in the Neolithic village. The scene has changed. The grandmother has passed away. The child is now a grown man. He sits by the fire carving a figure of a horse from a piece of mammoth ivory. He uses his left hand. The correction of his youth did not stick. The bind failed. His carving is exquisite. It has a fluidity, a sense of motion that the rigid carvings of his right-handed peers lack. He has found a way to use his difference. He is still viewed with a mix of awe and suspicion by the tribe. They whisper that he has the touch of the moon. They say his hand moves like a ghost, but they trade their best furs for his carvings. This is the ultimate victory of the left-hander. They turn the stigma into a style. They turn the sinister into the signature. We must also recognize the biological resilience of the trait itself. Despite the millennia of cultural suppression, despite the tying of hands and the wrapping of knuckles, the percentage of left-handers never dropped to zero. You cannot beat a gene out of a population. You can suppress its expression, yes. You can force a left-handed child to write with their right hand, but you cannot change the wiring of their brain. You cannot change the way they reach for a falling cup. The trait is stubborn. It is a frequency-dependent warrior that refuses to surrender. It hides in the DNA, skipping a generation, only to re-emerge in a grandchild, loud and undeniable. "Look," the mother says, watching her baby reach for the rattle with the left hand. "He is like his grandfather." And in that moment, the connection is made. The lineage of the outsider continues. As we move toward the modern era, the shadow begins to lift, but the memory remains. We no longer burn the sinister at the stake. We no longer tie the hand behind the back, though this practice persisted well into the 20th century in many schoolhouses. But the world is still built for the right. The left-hander still lives in a mirror. They still open the can the hard way. They still smudge the ink. They still bump elbows at the dinner table. But this struggle has become a defining trait of their character. It instills a subtle independence. A left-hander knows deep down that the standard way is not the only way. They know that rules are often arbitrary, built by a majority for their own comfort. This skepticism is a survival mechanism. In a changing world where the old rules often fail, the person who questions the right way is the person who finds the new path. The mark of the outsider was meant to be a brand of shame, but the left-hander wore it like a badge of honor. They took the darkness of the sinister and found the stars hidden within it. They took the awkward and turned it into the jazz of improvisation. As the smoke of the Neolithic fire fades and the stone temples of the ancients crumble into ruin, the left-hander remains. They are the silent witnesses to the folly of uniformity. They are the living proof that to be different is not to be broken. It is to be whole in a way that the world is not yet ready to understand. And so, the child who was corrected by the elders grows up to be the elder who teaches the tribe a new way to see. The hand that was rejected becomes the hand that reshapes the world. The outsider becomes the visionary. and the shadow, once cast upon the left hand, becomes the shade under which the unique and the beautiful can grow. We descend now. We leave the sun-drenched fields of the Neolithic and the blood-stained dust of the Bronze Age arena. We leave the world of the horizontal, the horizon, the furrow, the path, and we enter the world of the vertical. We crawl into the belly of the earth. The air here is different. It is cool, heavy, and smells of wet limestone, ancient dust, and the iron tang of water that has dripped through the rock for 1,000,000 years. It is a silence so profound that it hums in the ears, a sensory deprivation tank built by geology. In this crushing dark, illuminated only by the flickering grease of a shallow stone lamp, we find the spiritual cradle of humanity. And here, in the dancing shadows of the cave, we find the true apotheosis of the left hand. For generations, we have spoken of the left-hander as the anomaly, the fighter, the weaver, the outcast. But in the deep caves of the Upper Paleolithic, in Lascaux, in Chauvet, in Altamira, the outcast becomes the oracle. The sinister hand becomes the sacred hand. Imagine the procession moving into the dark. They are leaving the real world, the world of the right hand, the world of sun and law and rigid order. They are entering the underworld, the realm of the dream, the spirit, and the dead. And leading them is the one who walks between the worlds. Let us look at the shaman. He, or very often she, is a figure draped in the skins of the cave lion or the bison. They move with a strange, fluid grace in the uneven dark. While the others stumble, their eyes adjusting painfully to the gloom, the shaman seems to see with a different sense. And when they reach the cathedral, the great cavern where the walls arch high like the ribs of a leviathan, the shaman raises a hand to the rock. It is the left hand. Anthropologists and neuroscientists have long whispered about the creative explosion that occurred some 40,000 years ago. Suddenly, the human mind woke up. We stopped merely making tools and started making symbols. We started painting our dreams. And there is a compelling poetic theory that the divergence in brain structure, the very error that created the left-hander, was the spark that ignited this fire. We must return to the architecture of thought. We know that the brain is lateralized. For the majority, the right hemisphere is the silent partner. It is the seat of the holistic, the spatial, the emotional, the metaphorical. It is the part of us that understands the shape of a melody, the sadness of a sunset, the face in the cloud. But in the right-handed brain, this silent giant is often shouted down by the chatty, logical, linear left hemisphere. But for the left-hander, the barriers are permeable. The doors of perception, as the poets call them, are left ajar. The shaman stands before the blank wall of the cave. But to their eyes, it is not blank. The rock face is alive. It bumps and curves. It has cracks and fissures. Where the conventional eye sees only stone, the left-hander's brain, wired for intense pattern recognition, sees a shape. The bump in the limestone becomes the shoulder of a bison. The crack becomes the antler of a stag. This is pareidolia, the ability to see meaning in chaos. It is a function heavily reliant on the right hemisphere. The left-hander, with their reversed or bilateral wiring, accesses this vision with a terrifying ease. They do not invent the image, they release it. They are not drawing on the rock, they are drawing out of the rock. Watch the shaman's hand now. They hold a piece of charcoal, cold and black, the burned remnant of a sacred fire. They hold it in the left hand. This is the hand of the unconscious. It is the hand that connects directly to the visual, spatial, emotional centers of the right brain without having to cross the bridge of logic. The movement is fluid, sweeping. The charcoal strikes the stone. A line appears. It is not a stiff, calculated diagram. It is a living contour. It captures the movement of the animal, the heave of the breath, the panic of the eye. The art of the Paleolithic is not primitive. It is incredibly sophisticated, full of motion and perspective that would not be seen again until the Renaissance. Is it a coincidence that Da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Holbein were left-handed? Is it a coincidence that the greatest masters of capturing the soul of a subject were those who held the brush in the wrong hand? Here, in the flickering torchlight, the connection is forged. The shaman draws the bison to ensure the hunt, yes. But they are also drawing to map the human soul. They are externalizing the internal. And the left hand is the conduit. Let us linger on the specific technique of the hand stencil. On the walls of caves from Borneo to France, we find the most haunting signature of our species. A hand is placed against the rock. Pigment, red ochre or black manganese, is blown through a hollow bone pipe over the hand. When the hand is removed, a negative image remains. A ghost hand, surrounded by a halo of color. Forensic analysis of these stencils reveals a startling secret. A disproportionate number of them, in some caves the vast majority, are left hands. Now pause and consider the mechanics. If you are alone and you want to make a stencil of your hand, you place your non-dominant hand on the wall and you hold the pipe with your dominant skilled hand to manipulate it. So, a right-hander would stencil their left hand. This suggests that the caves were filled with right-handers. But wait, look at the stencils where the hand is drawing. Look at the sketches where the flow of the line suggests a left-to-right pull. There are panels in the cave of Nyo where the artist had to lean in awkward positions that only make biomechanical sense for a left-hander. And then there is the ritual of the reverse. In many shamanic traditions, the spirit world is a mirror world. Everything there is backward. To enter it, you must walk backward. To speak to the spirits, you must speak in reverse. To touch the sacred, you must use the other hand. Perhaps the left-hander was the natural-born citizen of this mirror world. Picture the day in the life of this shaman. In the sunlight above, they are perhaps a bit clumsy. They struggle with the specific knot-tying of the fish nets. They bump elbows at the communal pot. They are the odd one, the one who stares too long at the river, the one who talks to the wind. The tribe tolerates them, perhaps fears them a little. They are the marked one. But when the sun sets and the tribe needs answers, they turn to the outsider. The drought has lasted too long. The herds have not returned. The fear of death hangs over the camp like a shroud. Go to the deep, the elders say. The left-hander takes the lamp. They crawl into the narrow throat of the cave. They squeeze through the birth canal of the rock, scraping their skin, descending into the dark. Here, the sensory deprivation begins to work on the brain. The silence creates hallucinations. The flickering light makes the shadows dance. For the neurodivergent brain of the left-hander, already prone to magical thinking, already walking the thin line between reality and dream, this environment is a trigger. They enter a trance. The boundaries of the self dissolve. The corpus callosum, that thick superhighway we spoke of, glows white-hot with traffic. The analytical left brain and the mystical right brain begin to sing in harmony. They see the solution. It is not a logical deduction. It is a vision. They see the herds moving through a valley 3 days' walk to the north. They feel the rain coming in the ache of their bones. They pick up the charcoal. The left hand moves. It draws the map. It draws the prayer. When they emerge, blinking into the morning light, covered in red dust and soot, they are transformed. They are no longer the clumsy outcast. They are the savior. They are the one who has touched the gods. This role of the seer gave the left-hander a powerful survival niche. They did not need to be the best spear thrower, though they often were. They did not need to be the fastest runner. They provided a service that was intangible but essential: hope, meaning, guidance. The tribe fed the shaman. The tribe protected the shaman. And thus, the genes of the different brain were preserved, carried down through the bloodlines of the mystics, the poets, and the dreamers. We must also consider the concept of lateral thinking. This is a modern term for an ancient survival skill. It is the ability to solve a problem by ignoring the obvious path and finding a sideways approach. The right-handed brain, generally speaking, is an optimizer. It finds a good way to do something and repeats it. It builds the road. The left-handed brain, constantly forced to navigate a world that doesn't fit, is an improviser. It finds the deer trail in the woods. In the lore of the tribe, this became magic. What is magic, after all, but a solution that defies the conventional logic of cause and effect? The left-hander, tying the knot backward, curing the sickness with a strange root found in the shadow of the mountain, predicting the storm before the clouds appeared. This was magic. The left hand became the widdershins hand. In later folklore, moving widdershins, counter-sunwise or leftward, was a way to summon fairies or break spells. It was the direction of enchantment. The left-hander lived their whole life in widdershins. They were a walking enchantment. Let us return to the cave wall. The painting is finished. It is a masterpiece of bison and horses flowing across the ceiling. The shaman stands back. Their heart is pounding. The smell of the fat lamp is cloying in the stale air. They look at their own hands. The right hand, clean, rests at their side. The left hand, stained black with charcoal and red with ochre, pulses with a phantom energy. It is the hand that bridged the gap. They place their left hand against the wall one last time. They blow the pigment. They leave their mark. "I was here," the hand says. "I was the one who saw." Thousands of years later, a flashlight beam cuts through the dark. A modern archaeologist, perhaps left-handed themselves, stands in the same spot. They look at the stencil. They measure the thumb, the angle of the fingers. "A left hand," they whisper. And in that moment, the circuit is closed. The spark jumps across 20,000 years. We realize that the history of human ascent was not just a march of soldiers and kings. It was a dream dreamt by the outliers. It was a vision caught by the ones who stood at the back of the cave, the ones who held the charcoal in the sinister hand and dared to draw the world not as it was, but as it could be. The shaman's vision is the legacy of the left hand. It is the gift of seeing the invisible. It is the reminder that in the grand evolutionary story, the trait that seems like a weakness, the divergence, the anomaly, the error, is often the very thing that saves us from the blindness of the ordinary. As you drift deeper into sleep, picture that red handprint on the wall of your own mind. It is a sign of protection. It is a sign of creativity. It is the ancient silent greeting of the 10%, watching over the dreams of the species, painting the dark with the colors of the spirit. The hand is still. The paint is dry. But the vision remains. The wheel of time, which once turned with the slow, seasonal lethargy of the constellations, now begins to spin with a terrifying velocity. We have walked together through the silent, moonlit savannas where the only sound was the breathing of the grass. We have crouched in the damp caves where the only light was the flickering tallow lamp. We have stood in the bronze-dust arena of the ancient duel. But now, the horizon darkens. The scent of wood smoke and rain is replaced by the acrid, biting tang of coal dust and sulfur. The rhythm of the earth, the heartbeat of the migration, the pulse of the tides, is drowned out by a new, relentless percussion. We enter the age of iron. We enter the era of the machine. As the forests of Europe and America are felled to feed the furnaces, a profound shift occurs in the relationship between the human hand and the human world. For millions of years, the tool was a servant of the hand. The stone axe was knapped to fit the specific grip of the maker. The wooden spear was balanced to the unique arm length of the hunter. The tool was an individual object crafted by an individual soul for an individual purpose. There was room in this organic relationship for variation. There was room for the anomaly. But as the Industrial Revolution rises from the soot-stained earth, the tool becomes the master. The concept of standardization becomes the new god of the species. To feed the hungry mouths of the growing cities, to clothe the armies of the empires, production must be uniform. Efficiency becomes the highest virtue, and efficiency demands a single standard. And that standard, inevitably mathematically, is the standard of the majority. The factories that rise like brick cathedrals against the gray sky are filled with levers, gears, and cranks. They are complex anatomies of steel and brass. And every single one of them is designed by the right hand for the right hand. The design default of the human species is cemented into the very infrastructure of civilization. The world becomes a rigid place, a landscape of unyielding metal that does not care about the 10%. For the left-hander, the Industrial Revolution was not just a change in economy, it was a silent, daily obstacle course. It was a physical world that had suddenly turned its back on them. Imagine the factory floor in Manchester or Lowell in the year 1850. The air is thick with cotton fibers, a white snow that coats the lungs. The noise is deafening, a cacophony of shuttles flying, belts slapping, pistons hissing. A worker stands before a power loom. It is a beast of cast iron, unforgiving and blind. To operate this machine, there is a specific choreography required. The safety lever is on the right. The feed mechanism is on the right. The emergency brake is positioned for the quick, instinctive reach of a right hand. Now place a left-hander in this station. Their natural instinct, the firing of their motor cortex that has been honed by thousands of years of genetics, is to reach with the left. But to reach with the left is to reach across the body. It is to cross the center line. In the geography of the machine, this is the zone of danger. To reach with the left hand toward a lever on the right is to bring the sleeve of the shirt closer to the spinning gears. It is to twist the torso, disrupting the center of balance. For the right-hander, the movement is open, an extension of the arm. For the left-hander, the movement is closed, a constriction of the self. This was the new predator of the modern age. It was not a leopard stalking in the grass, waiting for a moment of weakness. It was a spinning flywheel that waited for a moment of cross-geometry. The industrial accident rates of the 19th and early 20th centuries hold a silent statistical secret. The left-hander was at greater risk. They were navigating a world that was geometrically hostile to their survival, and yet they did not vanish. They did not retreat to the countryside to die out. Watch how they adapt. The human spirit is nothing if not malleable. The left-hander, standing before that loom, developed a phantom dexterity. They learned to suppress the ancient urge of the dominant hand. They learned to become functionally ambidextrous in a way that their right-handed peers never had to. Watch the left-handed worker. They develop a unique choreography to interact with the mechanism of modern life. They learn to twist the wrist at an unnatural angle to turn the crank. They learn to cross their arms with the fluidity of a dancer, ducking the spinning belt, finding the rhythm of the machine from the wrong side. They are hacking the system with their bodies. This era proved the incredible plasticity of the left-handed brain. Forced to function in a mirrored reality, they developed a cognitive reserve. Every time they approached a tool, they had to solve a micro-puzzle. This handle curves that way, so I must grip it this way. This constant mental rotation, this relentless translation of the world's instructions, kept the neural pathways between the hemispheres glowing with activity. Consider the humble pair of scissors. In the Bronze Age, a knife was a knife. It cut equally well in either hand. But the scissor is a machine of torque. It relies on the shearing action of two blades pressed together. When a right-hander closes a pair of standard scissors, the natural squeezing motion of the thumb and fingers pushes the blades together, creating a crisp, clean cut. The physics of the hand matches the physics of the tool. But hand those same scissors to a left-hander. The natural squeezing motion of the left hand pushes the blades apart. The paper bends, the cloth frays, the tool fails. It is a moment of frustration that every left-handed child knows intimately. It is the object telling you, you are wrong. To make the scissors work, the left-hander must do something extraordinary. They must apply force in a counterintuitive direction. They must squeeze and pull or twist simultaneously, fighting the natural mechanics of their own hand to force the tool to obey. They are operating the machine from the inside out. This struggle creates a specific kind of relationship with the material world. The right-hander trusts objects. They reach out, and the object works. The door handle turns. The can opener bites. The serrated knife slices. The left-hander learns to mistrust objects. They approach the physical world with a wariness, a subtle calculation. They are the skeptics of the material. We move from the factory to the schoolroom, another invention of the industrial age. Here, standardization is not just about tools. It is about minds. The rows of desks are bolted to the floor. The inkwells are placed on the right side of the desk. The act of writing, the technology of the word, becomes a physical battleground. In the West, we write from left to right. For a right-hander, the hand pulls the pen across the page, trailing away from the fresh ink. The view of the words is open. For the left-hander, the hand pushes the pen. It trails over the fresh ink. To avoid smudging the words, to avoid the wrath of the teacher and the shame of the messy page, the left-hander must contort the wrist. They develop the hook. They curl the hand all the way around, writing from above, creating a painful, cramped posture that twists the spine and strains the shoulder. This hook is a physical scar of the industrial pressure. It is the body deforming itself to fit the rule. And yet, look at the calligraphy that emerges. It is often beautiful, unique, bearing the slant of the struggle. The left-hander in the Victorian classroom learned a profound lesson in resilience. I must work twice as hard to produce the same result as my neighbor. This grit, this adaptation tax that they paid every day, forged a character of steel. It is no coincidence that in the history of innovation, so many inventors were left-handed. When you spend your life struggling with tools that don't fit, you are the first one to dream of a better tool. You are the one who looks at the machine and says, "This is poorly designed." The friction of their existence became the spark of their creativity. Let us look at the bolt-action rifle, the supreme tool of industrial warfare. In the trenches of the First World War, the Lee Enfield or the Mauser was the difference between life and death. These rifles were designed for the right hand. The bolt handle sticks out to the right. To cycle the action, to eject the spent shell and chamber a new one, the right-hander keeps the rifle shouldered, his left hand steady on the stock, his right hand flying back and forth in a blur of motion. The left-hander cannot do this. To cycle the bolt, he must reach over the rifle with his left hand, obscuring his sight picture, or he must lower the rifle, switch hands, cycle the bolt, and re-shoulder. In the mud of the Somme, where a second was an eternity, this clumsiness was fatal. And yet the left-hander adapted. They learned to reach under. They learned to tilt the rifle. They learned to fire from the right shoulder, suppressing their dominant eye, retraining their brain to aim with the weak eye. This is a profound biological sacrifice, to deny the dominance of the eye. But they did it to survive. They morphed their very physiology to merge with the machine of war. This era of steam and steel was a crucible. It was a test of the evolutionary stable strategy we spoke of earlier. If the left-hander was merely a biological error, the Industrial Revolution should have wiped them out. The accident rates, the inefficiency, the sheer exhaustion of living in a mirrored world should have been too high a cost. The gene should have faded. But it did not. The 10% held the line. Why? Because the machine is not everything. The world of the 19th and 20th centuries was not just gears and levers. It was also a world of rapidly changing systems, of social upheaval, of complex problem-solving. And here, the right brain assets of the left-hander, the lateral thinking, the intuition, the ability to see the whole picture, became more valuable than ever. While the right-handers were excellent at operating the machines, the left-handers were often excellent at understanding the systems that built the machines. The same brain wiring that made them struggle with the scissors made them brilliant at visualizing the three-dimensional rotation of the parts. We see this in the figure of Nikola Tesla, often rumored to be left-handed or ambidextrous, a man who hallucinated his inventions in perfect 3D detail before he ever put pen to paper. His mind was a laboratory of the Sinister, a place where the conventional laws of physics were twisted and examined from new angles. The industrial shift also brought a shift in the social weaver dynamic. As work moved from the field to the office, the friction of the elbow became a daily dance. At the dinner table, at the boardroom table, the left-hander had to choose their seat carefully. "I must sit at the corner," they would say. "I must sit on the left, so I do not bump you." This constant social awareness, this hyper-vigilance of their own body and space, made them masters of proprioception, the sense of self-movement and body position. A left-hander knows exactly where their elbow is at all times. They move through a crowd with a fluid, weaving grace, unconsciously protecting their dominant side, unconsciously navigating the flow of the right-handed river. There is a quiet dignity in this adaptation. It is the dignity of the traveler in a foreign land who learns the language so well they can write poetry in it, even if they still speak with an accent. The left-hander speaks the language of the right-handed world fluently, but they think in their own tongue. As the steam engines cooled and gave way to the electric hum of the 20th century, The design bias began to soften, but only slightly. We invented the computer mouse, placed on the right. We invented the gear shift, placed on the right. The camera shutter button, placed on the right. The left-hander continued to cross over. They continued to reach across the abyss. And in doing so, they strengthened the bridge. The corpus callosum of the collective human species was thickened by their struggle. By forcing a segment of the population to live as ambidextrous citizens, we created a pool of individuals who were comfortable with discomfort. We created a reserve of adaptability. In the deep biological history of our species, the ability to overcome the environment is the supreme trait. In the Ice Age, the environment was the cold. We overcame it with fire and furs. In the Industrial Age, the environment was the machine. We overcame it with neuroplasticity. The left-hander proved that the brain is not a fixed stone, but a flowing river. If you block the channel, the water cuts a new path. If you build a world that denies the left hand, the mind will rewire itself to control the right, or it will find a way to make the left hand move like a shadow, slipping through the gaps in the gears. So, look at the left-hander in your life today. Watch them pick up a guitar. Watch them sign a check. Watch them open a door. You are seeing a survivor of the industrial obstacle course. You are seeing a descendant of the Stone Age napper who has learned to nap steel and silicon. They carry a cognitive reserve born of necessity. They carry the memory of the struggle in the very way they hold their pen. And they stand as a testament to the fact that humanity cannot be standardized. We are too wild, too ancient, and too complex to be reduced to a single cog in a single machine. The gears may grind, the pistons may pump, but the left hand, the hand of the dreamer, the hand of the shadow, will always find a way to turn the wheel in its own direction. The smoke clears. The noise of the factory fades into the hum of the electronic age. The physical obstacles remain, but the spirit has vaulted over them. The legacy of the industrial shift is not that the left-hander was crushed, but that they were polished. The friction of the machine did not destroy the diamond. It only revealed its many facets. And as we move into the future, into worlds of virtual reality and neural interfaces where the physical hand may no longer matter, the adaptable, cross-wired, resilient mind of the left-hander may well be the blueprint for the next stage of our evolution. We stand now on the precipice of the modern understanding, perched at the edge of a cliff that overlooks not a valley of stone and river, but the vast, spiraling canyon of our own interior history. The wind here is silent, for it blows not through the air, but through the blood. We have journeyed from the scorching heat of the Pliocene savannah, where the first ape stood upright and looked at its hands in wonder. We have walked through the frozen cathedrals of the Ice Age, where the breath of the shaman clouded the air as they painted the bison on the wall. We have navigated the soot-stained labyrinth of the Industrial Revolution, where the machine demanded conformity and the body rebelled. But now, we turn our gaze inward. We dissolve the skin. We look past the muscle, past the bone, past the very architecture of the brain itself. We descend into the microscopic ocean of the cell. Here, in the quiet, watery dark of the nucleus, floating like an ancient scroll in a bottle, lies the script of our creation. Here lies the double helix. It is a twisting ladder of stardust and chemistry, a library written in only 4 letters, A, C, T, and G. And somewhere within this immense coiled archive, hidden in the spaces between the instructions for building a heart or a lung, lies the secret of the left hand. For centuries, scholars and scientists, like the augurs of old, reading the flight of birds, sought a simple answer. They looked for the left-handed gene. They imagined a single switch, a solitary toggle in the code that said Sinister instead of Dexter. They searched for a Mendelian clarity, a dominant and recessive logic, like the blue eyes of a husky or the wrinkled skin of a pea. They wanted the comfort of a binary choice, yes or no, left or right. But nature, in her infinite and terrifying complexity, rarely offers such simple gifts. As we peered deeper into the genome, using light deeper than sight, the single gene evaporated like mist in the morning sun. In its place, we found a symphony. We discovered that handedness is not a solo played by one instrument, but an orchestral swell involving dozens, perhaps hundreds, of tiny genetic variations. It is a polygenic trait, a choir of alleles singing in a complex overlapping harmony. Imagine the genome as a vast prehistoric landscape. There is no single mountain that defines the left hand. Instead, there are many small hills, subtle shifts in the terrain. One gene might influence the structure of the cytoskeleton, the scaffolding of the cell. Another might tweak the migration of neurons in the developing cortex. Another might adjust the sensitivity of the body to testosterone in the womb. None of these genes on their own creates a left-hander, but together they create a probabilistic ghost. They create a tendency, a whisper, a nudge. They load the dice. This realization brings us to a profound understanding of our own biological destiny. We are not machines built from a rigid blueprint. We are poems written in a language that is constantly shifting. The genetic echo of left-handedness is a reminder of this fluidity. It is a roll of the biological dice that happens in the silence of conception, a gamble that nature takes with every new life. Let us visualize this lottery. Picture the moment of fertilization. It is a spark in the dark, a chemical sunrise. Two lineages, the mothers and the fathers, collide and fuse. The ancient memories of thousands of ancestors are shuffled like a deck of cards. Perhaps the father was a right-hander, a spear thrower of the orthodox style. But his mother, the grandmother of the new life, was a left-hander. She carried the sinistral variants in her blood. She passed them to her son, but in him, they were silent. They were recessive, hidden, sleeping. He was a carrier of the shadow. Now he passes half his deck to the new child. And perhaps the mother of the child also carries a few of these silent cards, handed down from a forgotten ancestor who scraped hides with a reversed grip during the last glacial maximum. In the fusion of the new cell, the cards align. The sinistral variants from the father meet the sinistral variants from the mother. They recognize each other. They link arms. The threshold is crossed. The ghost wakes up. The child, born to two right-handed parents, reaches for the rattle with their left hand. This is the legacy that skips. It is the phenomenon that has baffled families for millennia. Where did it come from? They ask, looking at the left-handed child as if they were a changeling left by the fairies. We are all right-handed. The uncles are right-handed. The cousins are right-handed. But the gene does not care about the immediate family portrait. It cares about deep time. It has been hiding in the bloodline, traveling incognito through the generations, waiting for the right combination of safecrackers to open the lock. It is a stowaway on the ship of the family history, emerging only when the stars align. This skipping nature is what kept the trait alive. If it were a dominant gene, expressed in every carrier, perhaps it would have been selected against more harshly in the superstitious ages. If every carrier was visibly sinister, perhaps the persecution would have been total. But because it could hide, because it could travel silently through the bodies of the right-handed majority, it survived the purges. It survived the schools where hands were tied. It survived the accusations of witchcraft. It survived the correction of the grandmother. The gene went underground. It became a sleeper cell of diversity, waiting for a safer time or a necessary time to reveal itself. But genetics is only half the story. The echo is not just a digital code. It is an analog struggle. We must look at the environment of the womb. We float now in the amniotic sea, the warm, saline universe where the individual is forged. Here, the genetic echo meets the hormonal weather. Scientists have observed that high levels of testosterone in the womb might slow the growth of the left hemisphere of the brain. Remember, the left hemisphere controls the right hand. If the left hemisphere is delayed, the right hemisphere, the controller of the left hand, might take the lead. It might become the dominant twin. This is the Geschwind-Galiberta hypothesis, a name that sounds like an incantation, but describes a biological storm. Imagine a summer drought on the savannah that stresses the mother, altering her hormonal balance. Or imagine a winter of plenty, where the chemistry of the blood shifts. These environmental factors, the season of the birth, interact with the genetic predisposition. It is a dance between nature and nurture, performed in the dark. The genes provide the potential, the sheet music. The womb provides the acoustics, the concert hall, and the resulting melody is the handedness of the child. This complexity tells us that the left-hander is not an accident in the crude sense of a mistake. They are a developmental variant. They are what happens when the standard plan is tweaked by the subtle chaos of life. And this brings us to the most beautiful and haunting question of all. Why? Why does the echo persist? Why has this complex symphony of alleles not fallen silent after 200,000 years of human struggle? We know that evolution is a ruthless editor. It deletes what is useless. It erases what is too costly. If a trait confers no advantage, or if it brings too much risk, it slowly fades from the population, like a path in the forest that is no longer walked. But the path of the left hand remains. It is walked by 10 to 12% of the population, a number that holds steady across continents, across cultures, across races. In the bustling streets of Tokyo, in the remote villages of the Amazon, in the skyscrapers of New York, the ratio is the same. This stability suggests that the trait is not evolutionary noise. It is not just a glitch in the system. It is a signal. It is a deliberate retention of diversity. Nature loves a backup plan. Nature loves a portfolio. If we were all identical, if we all had the same immune system, the same brain structure, the same handedness, a single virus or a single type of predator or a single environmental catastrophe could wipe us out. Uniformity is the prelude to extinction. The persistence of the 10% is a form of species insurance. By keeping this minority alive, by keeping the sinistral variant circulating in the gene pool, nature ensures that there is always a segment of the population that sees the world differently. There is always a group that reacts to the unexpected strike from the opposite angle. There is always a group that thinks laterally when the linear path is blocked. The genetic echo is a banking of potential. It is the species saying, we might need this later. We see this same logic in the sickle cell gene. One copy of the gene protects against malaria. 2 copies cause anemia. It is a balanced polymorphism, a trade-off kept in the blood because the benefit outweighs the cost. Perhaps left-handedness is similar. Perhaps the genes that create the left-hander also confer other invisible advantages to the carriers, even the right-handed carriers. Maybe the sisters of left-handers are more fertile. Maybe the brothers of left-handers have better spatial memory. The sinistral alleles might be doing work that we cannot see, weaving strength into the family tree in ways that have nothing to do with holding a pen. This idea transforms the left-hander from an anomaly into a totem. They are the visible tip of an iceberg of hidden diversity. They are the proof that the family line carries the magic of the variant. Let us imagine a modern family gathering. It is a holiday. The table is set. 3 generations are present. The grandfather sits at the head, carving the turkey with his right hand. The father pours the wine with his right hand. But the grandson, sitting at the end of the table, picks up his fork with his left. The grandfather watches him. He remembers his own father, who was left-handed, a man who fought in the Great War and came back silent and strong. He sees the echo. He sees the ghost of the great-grandfather's grip in the child's hand. It is a sudden, undeniable reemergence. The skip is over. The trait has surfaced again, like a river that flows underground for miles, only to burst forth as a spring in a new valley. This genetic connection binds us to the deep past. Every time a child picks up a crayon with their left hand, they are not just making a drawing. They are manifesting an ancient biological strategy. They are reenacting the breaking of the mirror that happened in the Pliocene. They are the living result of the fighter's hypothesis. They are the heirs of the social weaver. They are walking a distinct pathway of development that has weathered ice ages, plagues, and wars. Think of the bottlenecks our species has survived. The eruption of Toba that reduced us to a few thousand breeding pairs. The Black Death that emptied the cities of Europe. The great famines. Through all of this, the sinistral alleles held on. They refused to let go of the raft. This resilience suggests that the left hand is vibrant. It is not a vestige like the appendix withering away from disuse. It is a vital, active part of the human story. It is a frequency that the species is tuning itself to maintain. Let us return to the image of the DNA. We are looking at the Hox genes, the master architects that lay out the body plan, head to tail, left to right. In the fly, in the mouse, in the human, these genes are ancient conservators of geometry. Deep in this code, there is a mechanism for breaking symmetry. It is the mechanism that moves the heart to the left. And linked to it, loosely, elegantly, is the mechanism that moves the hand. When we look at this code, we are looking at a document that has been edited by 4 billion years of life. And the fact that the left turn is still written there, in bold ink, is a testament to its necessity. The genetic echo is also a reminder of our individuality. In a world that often demands conformity, that pushes us toward the average, our biology quietly resists. It generates difference from within. It ensures that no 2 brains are truly alike. Even identical twins who share 100% of their DNA can have different-handedness. One can be right, one left. This is the mirror twin phenomenon. Even with the exact same genetic script, the environment of the womb, the position of the fetuses, the blood supply, can rewrite the outcome. This proves that biology is not destiny. It is a conversation. It is a dialogue between the code and the world. The left-hander is the ultimate individual. They are the result of a unique, unrepeatable conversation between their genes and their gestation. They are a singularity. As we move toward the final chapter of our story, we must carry this reverence with us. We must look at the left hand not as a quirk, but as a masterpiece of probability. It is the result of 1,000,000 coin tosses landing the same way. It is a winning lottery ticket held in the grip of a child. The echoes of the ancestors are not just in our museums or our history books. They are in our hands. When the left-handed pianist plays a chord, the ghost of the stone napper strikes the core. When the left-handed tennis player serves an ace, the ghost of the spear thrower releases the shaft. When the left-handed artist draws a line, the ghost of the shaman touches the wall. The blood remembers. The DNA remembers. And the echo rings out, clear and true, a note of beautiful dissonance in the great harmony of the human race. We are not alone in our bodies. We carry the multitude. And in the left hand, the multitude speaks with a voice that is ancient, mysterious, and enduring. The silence of the genome is not empty. It is full of the whispers of the 10%, the guardians of the alternative path, the keepers of the echo. And so, we arrive at the present moment. The great wheel of time has turned its full revolution, carrying us from the sun-scorched dust of the Pliocene savannah through the freezing blue-shadowed silence of the Ice Age, past the grinding gears of the Industrial Revolution, and depositing us here in the quiet sanctity of this room, in this specific hour of the night. The noise of history has faded to a hum. The struggles of the ancestors, the desperate flight from the leopard, the shivering hunger of the winter cave, the brutal clash of bronze on bronze have settled into the sediment of the past. They are the bedrock upon which this moment rests, silent and immovable. The night is quiet. The world outside the window may still be moving. Cars tracing ribbons of light on asphalt rivers, signals bouncing invisibly between steel towers. But here, in the intimate circle of your awareness, there is stillness. Take a moment, in this calm, to look down at your own hands. Perhaps they are resting on the soft fabric of a blanket. Perhaps they are clasped together, fingers interlaced in that ancient, unconscious basket weave of flesh. Look at them not as tools of the mundane, not as the things that type emails or hold coffee cups, but as artifacts. They are the end result of 4 billion years of biological engineering. They are the survivors. Whether you are of the majority, the 90% who follow the path of the sun, or of the minority, the 10% who walk the moonlit path of the shadow, you are a product of this long, winding journey. You are the echo of the first cell that decided to divide. You are the memory of the first fin that touched the mud. If you are right-handed, look at your left hand. It is not a passive thing. It is the steady anchor. It is the hand that has supported the spear, the paper, the steering wheel. It is the silent partner that allowed the dominance to flourish. And if you are left-handed, look at that hand with a new reverence. It is a rare flower. It is a biological rebel. It is the hand that defied the statistical gravity of the species to carve its own arc through the air. Left-handedness today is no longer a curse. The word sinister has been scrubbed of its demonic weight, leaving only a faint etymological residue, a curiosity for scholars. The stigma that forced children to bind their arms, that saw the southpaw as a broken thing to be fixed, has largely evaporated like mist before the morning sun. We have entered an era of acceptance, a time when the variation is not just tolerated, but often celebrated as a badge of distinction. It is a celebration of human uniqueness. The struggle for survival, which once meant the ability to throw a spear from the blind spot or parry a blow from the unexpected angle, has evolved. We no longer fight for protein on the plains. We fight for identity. We fight for self-expression. We fight to make our mark on a world that is crowded with voices. And here, in this new arena of culture and thought, the left-hander thrives. Consider the signature of the kings. In the last century, a blink of an eye in evolutionary time, we have seen a remarkable anomaly in the halls of power. A disproportionate number of presidents, prime ministers, and world leaders have been left-handed. Why? Is it the social weaver legacy we spoke of? Is it the ability of the non-lateralized brain to synthesize complex, conflicting information? Picture the signing of a great treaty. The cameras flash, freezing history in a burst of light. The leader leans forward. They take the pen, a modern tool, yet ancient in its purpose of making a mark. And they reach with the left hand. The angle of the arm is hooked, the wrist curled in that familiar, resilient adaptation to avoid the smudge. It is a visual disruption of the standard tableau. In that moment, the outsider is the ultimate insider. The one who thinks differently is the one holding the pen of history. Perhaps the adaptability forged by living in a right-handed world, the constant need to negotiate with door handles, scissors, and handshakes, creates a mind that is uniquely suited to the negotiation of nations. To be left-handed is to be a diplomat in a foreign land from the day you are born. It creates a toughness, a flexibility, a willingness to find the workaround. And let us drift from the halls of power to the stage of the artist. The shaman's vision has not faded. It has merely changed its medium. The charcoal on the cave wall has become the oil paint on the canvas, the pixel on the screen, the vibration of the string. Think of the musicians who have defined the soundtrack of the modern age. The guitarist who stands on stage, bathed in the violet light of the spotlight. He holds the instrument neck up, mirroring the rest of the band. The strings are reversed. The low E, the heavy vibration of the bass, is at the bottom or restrung to the top. He is playing the instrument backward. When a left-handed musician plays, they are tapping into that direct line we spoke of. The connection between the right hemisphere, the seat of emotion and melody, and the left hand, the executor of the will. There is less distance for the impulse to travel. The feeling flows from the heart, through the right brain, down the left arm, and into the wood and wire. It is a purer circuit. We hear it in the distorted underwater genius of Hendrix, who took a right-handed world and flipped it upside down, burning it with a new kind of fire. We hear it in the melodic, architectural bass lines of McCartney, who built the foundation of pop music with the Sinister hand. These are the modern shamans. They are using the anomaly to create a sound that the standard brain could not conceive. They are the unexpected strike turned into a chord. And what of the canvas? The list of left-handed painters is a roll call of those who broke the rules. Da Vinci, Michelangelo, Raphael, Holbein, and later the erratic, brilliant lines of Klee or Escher. The architecture of thought in the left-handed brain, that enhanced spatial awareness, that ability to rotate objects in the mind's eye, bleeds onto the page. Watch the left-handed artist at work. They often smear the graphite as they draw, their hand passing over the creation. This physical intimacy with the medium, this blurring of the line, becomes part of the style. They are fighting the medium and mastering it simultaneously. They see the negative space. They see the shadow. They see what the right-hander ignores. But the legacy is not just in the famous. It is in the everyday. It is in the quiet resilience of the millions. Imagine a classroom today. A child sits at a desk. They are left-handed. The scissors still don't quite cut. The paper tears. The spiral binding of the notebook digs into their wrist, leaving a red track like a phantom scar. The ink smudges on the side of their hand, the silver badge of the tribe. But look at the child's face. There is no shame there. There is frustration, perhaps, but also determination. They figure it out. They tilt the paper. They adjust the grip. They are learning in real time that the world is not perfectly designed and that they have the power to adapt to it. This child is building the cognitive reserve that will serve them for a lifetime. They are learning that there is more than one way to solve a problem. And when they meet another left-hander, there is a spark, a silent nod. The secret handshake of the minority. You too? You know the struggle of the ladle? You know the awkwardness of the elbow at the dinner table? In that shared glance, the ancient tribe creates a momentary connection. The descendants of the 10% recognize each other across the crowded room of the majority. The world of sports, too, remains a sanctuary for the fighter's hypothesis. The tennis court is the modern savannah. The clay is the dust of the arena. Watch the left-handed champion serve. The ball spins with a rotation that defies the muscle memory of the opponent. It kicks out wide to the backhand, finding the weakness, finding the blind spot. The crowd gasps. They are witnessing the Pleistocene advantage alive and well. The southpaw is still the riddle that the orthodox player cannot solve in the heat of the moment. In baseball, in boxing, in fencing, the left hand remains a prized weapon. It is the curveball of nature. It keeps the game honest. It prevents the competition from becoming a stagnant repetition of the same moves. But deeper than the fame, deeper than the skill, is the biological wonder of it all. We have mapped the human genome. We have peered into the brain with MRI machines, watching the blood flow like glowing rivers through the valleys of the cortex. And what we see in the left-handed brain is a beautiful messiness. We see a lack of rigid borders. We see language scattered across both hemispheres like seeds in the wind. We see a corpus callosum that is a superhighway of sparks. This atypical lateralization is not a disorder. It is a variation. It is proof that nature does not want us to be all the same. Nature craves the mosaic. If every human brain were wired exactly the same, with language on the left and emotion on the right, we would be a brittle species. We would all be susceptible to the same failures. We would all think in the same straight lines. But by introducing this random element, this spin of the roulette wheel, nature ensures that there are always minds that wander off the path. The left-hander is the salt in the ocean. You do not need the ocean to be entirely salt, but without it, the ocean is dead water. You do not need the whole tribe to be left-handed, but without them, the tribe is stagnant. As you lie here, drifting toward the edge of sleep, think of this diversity as a protective cloak. The differences between us, the color of our eyes, the texture of our hair, the hand we use to wave goodbye, are not errors. They are not mistakes to be corrected. They are the ancient carved-in-bone evidence of a species that survived by trying everything. We survived by being the generalists. We survived by being the specialists. We survived by being the rule followers and the rule breakers. We survived by throwing with the right and throwing with the left. The left hand is a vestige of variance. It is a living fossil. Every time you see a left-hander riding with that hooked hand, you are seeing a ghost of the Ice Age. You are seeing the persistence of the unexpected strike. You are seeing the social weaver who tied the knot backward to save the roof. And for you, the listener, whether you are of the left or the right, this story is yours. For the right-hander, the left-hander is your mirror, your shadow, the challenge that made you sharper. For the left-hander, the right-handed world is the stone against which you sharpened your own blade. We are a symbiotic species. One hand washes the other. One hand holds the nail, the other swings the hammer. We are two halves of the same great breathing organism. The night deepens. The hum of the modern world drops to a whisper. The lights of the city blur into stars. Let your own hands relax now. Let the fingers uncurl. Let the tension of the day, the gripping of steering wheels and phones and pens, drain away. Let the muscles of the forearm, the tendons that connect to the ancient levers of the elbow and shoulder, go soft. Think of the journey your hands have taken, not just in your lifetime, but in the lifetime of your blood. Think of the hands that held the first fire. Think of the hands that painted the bison. Think of the hands that built the pyramids, that wrote the symphonies, that held the children through the long, cold nights. They were right hands. They were left hands. They were human hands. In the left hand, we hold a piece of the primordial mystery. It is a silent, enduring testament to the beauty of the anomaly. It is the reminder that even in the womb, even in the deep code of life, there is room for the surprise. There is room for the different path. The silent symmetry that we began with millions of years ago on the savannah was broken for a reason. It was broken so that we could become complex. It was broken so that we could become whole in a new way. The mirror is shattered, but the shards are beautiful. Sleep now. Sleep in the comfort of a world wide enough for all of us. Sleep in the knowledge that your own quirks, your own deviations from the norm, are part of the great strategy of life. You are exactly as you were meant to be. The fire is embers. The cave is warm. The stars are wheeling overhead, turning left, turning right, indifferent to our names, but shining on our hands all the same. Good night.